Story 1.
Exposing my wife's infidelity, taking control of her family's business, and claiming their fortune. Liz Miller and I were in the same high school. I remembered her, but she didn't remember me. She grew up fast, with broad shoulders, a tiny waist, narrow hips, and she was tall. She was naturally good at sports. I grew up late, finishing high school at 5 feet 8 inches, with a small chest, thin legs, and weighing 140 lb. She loved how she looked and really cared about appearing attractive. Every day to school, I just wore jeans and a too large t-shirt, which made my chest look even smaller. At the beginning of each school year, all the girls looked forward to seeing Elizabeth's outfit because it set the fashion trend for that year. No one even noticed me at school. Elizabeth was amazing at tennis, having started lessons when she was 10. Her height and build gave her extra strength and endurance compared to smaller girls. In gym class, I was always the last one picked for teams, but I made up for what I lacked with a lot of hard work and determination. Long-distance running was an individual sport since it didn't involve physical contact. I chose it as my activity and turned out to be pretty good at it. Elizabeth had a busy social life filled with dates with popular guys, wealthy individuals, star athletes, and college fraternity members. Meanwhile, my schedule remained pretty empty throughout all 4 years of high school. I preferred spending my time tinkering with electronic gadgets and computers in the garage. While Elizabeth got a new car every fall to drive to school, I relied on my bike for transportation during all 4 years. During classes, Elizabeth was often engaged in conversations with boys. Despite us being in the same class and sitting near each other due to our last names, she only spoke to me once in 4 years. It was during a test when she handed me the paper and simply said, "Here." Her father owned Miller Manufacturing, a local company with a long-standing history of profitability. The business, started by her grandfather and now run by her father, employed 160 townspeople, including my father, who worked as a machinist at the plant since returning from the Army. After high school, I pursued a college education to become an industrial engineer, while Elizabeth received a full scholarship to a prestigious school for her talent in tennis, which often made headlines in our local newspaper. During my freshman and sophomore years of college, I experienced a growth spurt, adding 6 inches to my height and 50 lbs of muscle from my running routine. With a surge in testosterone, my physical attributes, including my tool size, also increased. As a straight-A student, physically fit and endowed, I entered my junior year with confidence. During my junior year's Christmas break, I went home to visit my parents. One evening, I attended a party hosted by one of my classmates where Elizabeth, looking stunning but heavily intoxicated, was present. Her boyfriend, also drunk, was making disrespectful comments about her. Fed up, she slapped him hard and declared she was leaving, instructing me to take her home since I was the only sober person there. As the sunlight filtered through the bedroom window, I slowly woke up from a daze. Elizabeth was still asleep beside me, but I sensed some movement. She groaned and grabbed my arm. Suddenly she tensed, realizing something was wrong. Turning to face me, she bombarded me with questions, her volume rising with each one. She jumped out of bed, glaring at me fiercely, demanding to know who I was and why I was in her bed. Thinking quickly to prevent the situation from escalating, I stood up and faced her boldly, explaining that I was the one she asked to take her home while she was drunk. I recounted how I prevented her from getting into a car with someone who could have taken advantage of her, how I helped her when she was sick, and how I stayed with her to ensure her safety throughout the night. I emphasized that I did not take advantage of her in her vulnerable state. After laying out the events of the previous night, I understood her confusion given her lack of memory. Although her stance remained unchanged, her angry expression softened. She quietly admitted, "I must have really overdone it last night. I have some fragmented memories, but nothing coherent. Do I know you?" "You know me, but you don't remember me." "My name is Jeff Mullen, and we sat next to each other in most of our high school classes. I was the skinny guy in jeans and a t-shirt, total geek." Elizabeth remarked, "You've got to be kidding me. I do remember you, always getting better grades than me. I may have borrowed a few answers from you on some tests." I confessed honestly, I purposely made my tests visible to you. I was too shy to talk to you and hoped you might start a conversation because I couldn't bring myself to. We both chuckled at that, and the tension of waking up together eased. I suggested, "Now that you know I'm not a serial killer, can I make you some toast and black coffee to counteract the effects of last night's heavy drinking?" She smiled and replied, "Yes, please." As I headed to the kitchen, I glanced at Elizabeth in the mirror on the wall, noticing she was checking me out too, with a slight smile and nod. While the coffee brewed, I toasted some bread and spread butter and a generous amount of grape jelly on it for a quick energy boost. I found a small white apron on the kitchen counter and put it on. Balancing a plate and a coffee cup, I returned to the bedroom, eliciting a hearty laugh from Elizabeth. She found my attempt at modesty amusing. As I placed the coffee and plate on the nightstand, she remarked, "This toast is loaded with jelly. Could you bring me a napkin? I'm probably going to make a mess." I grinned and remarked, "No need for a napkin. Grape jelly is my absolute favorite. I can't get enough of it." With a smile still on my face, I headed back to the kitchen to grab my coffee. But when I returned, I found grape jelly scattered everywhere. She smiled sheepishly and admitted, "Oops, looks like I made a mess." I understood that some guys could be selfish, prioritizing their own pleasure over their partners, but that wasn't my style. Sure, I didn't mind, especially since I did a lot of long-distance running, which requires focus. After we showered together, we found a dry spot on the sheets and just relaxed, holding each other close. Curious, I asked her why she was staying at Carol's instead of with her parents. In a hushed tone, she replied, "It's complicated, family dynamics and all. I don't really get along well with my brothers." I quickly changed the subject, asking, "What's on your agenda for later today?" Her expression softened, and she answered, "I'll be running pre-Christmas errands in the morning, and I have a tennis match at 2 p.m. But there's a foot of snow outside." "How are you going to play tennis?" I inquired. "We have an indoor tennis court at the country club, Jeff," she clarified. Life seemed to be going smoothly for me. I had a job interview scheduled for 1 p.m., and interestingly enough, it was with Robert Miller, president and chairman of the board of Miller Manufacturing, Inc. It was quite a coincidence considering I had just spent the morning with his daughter, and I planned to spend more time with her that evening. The last time I wore a suit was at my high school graduation, so I had bought a new one last week specifically for this meeting. Regardless of what had happened between Elizabeth and me that morning, I felt both nervous and excited about the interview. With a deep breath, I pushed open the door to the Miller Manufacturing corporate office and greeted my cousin Sally. My mother and Sally's mother were sisters, with Sally being 5 years older than me. Sally greeted me with a smile and directed me to take a seat while she informed Mr. Miller of my arrival. Giving Sally a playful wink, I confidently entered an office adorned with wood paneling, likely sourced from a small oak forest. Mr. Miller rose to greet me, offering a firm handshake and motioning for me to sit in one of the plush chairs beneath portraits of himself and his father. Curious, Mr. Miller inquired about the purpose of our meeting. I explained, "I'm a junior at State University seeking a summer internship, and Miller Manufacturing is my top choice." He questioned my preference for Miller Manufacturing, suggesting there were other prestigious companies available to someone like me. I responded, "Sir, this town is my roots. My family's been here for generations, and my father has been part of this company since returning from the Army. I've always admired the work done here. Ever since I was a kid coming in with my dad, I've inherited a solid industrial knowledge from him. While many grads aim for big cities like Chicago or Dallas, I want to stay here and contribute to your company. I understand I need to prove myself, but I'm willing to put in the effort. My goal is to intern with you this summer and hopefully secure a full-time position next year." Then Mr. Miller brought up his daughter Elizabeth. I knew I needed to tread carefully. With a gulp, I replied, "I knew of your daughter in high school, but we didn't run in the same circles." Mr. Miller seemed to recall the string of boys who had visited his home over the years. He then asked, "What can you offer me this summer, Jeff?" I assured him, "Sir, I'm willing to start from the bottom, doing tasks like sweeping floors and taking out the trash. In fact, I studied a case on your company during my industrial efficiency class this summer." My statement piqued his interest, prompting him to lean forward and encourage me to continue. At Miller Manufacturing, production halts daily at p.m. for machine cleaning, floor sweeping, and restocking materials. Currently, our highest-paid employees handle janitorial duties, costing $112 per hour compared to their usual $150 per hour. My proposal is to have machinists work until 5 p.m. and then leave the premises. Lower-paid staff, including janitors and summer interns, would complete the remaining tasks. It's crucial to adjust the hours of lower-paid workers to avoid exceeding 40 hours per week, even if they stay after 5:00 p.m. Jeff, could you provide me with a copy of your analysis? Absolutely, sir, although I haven't copyrighted it yet, I replied, eliciting a chuckle. What will it cost to have your expertise this summer, Jeff? My suggestion, Mr. Miller, is for you to determine the initial price, starting at the state minimum wage, and allow me to earn any increases. You've convinced me that we need fresh perspectives. Let's plan for you to be our first summer intern next June. Should I send you a contract? No, sir, I replied. A handshake is all I need. With that, I exited his office, sharing a wink with Sally on my way out. Feeling euphoric, I headed to the country club to watch Elizabeth's tennis lesson, buoyed by my newfound success. Inside, I could hear an intense match underway. I found a quiet spot and admired Elizabeth's skill and determination as she played. She exhibited power, speed, grace, and fierce competitiveness, leaving nothing to chance on the court. I felt proud to have started a connection with her. When she finished her set and came for a break, she spotted me. Surprised to see her recognize me in a suit, she called me over, gave me a kiss, and thanked me for showing interest in her tennis. "Elizabeth, you've been expending a lot of energy. Can I treat you to dinner and help replenish your carbs?" "Sure thing, Jeff. Pick me up at the apartment at—" "Okay, I'll be there," I said, flashing a grin. We went to Loney for pizza and beer, spending the time getting to know each other. Elizabeth is easy to talk to. Just ask her about herself, and you're set for the evening. She's quite talkative and has some fascinating stories. Tennis is her passion, and she dreams of turning it into a career, first as a pro player and later as a coach. She was genuinely impressed that I came to watch her practice. Most of her previous boyfriends only cared about one thing: bedroom activities. She appreciated my interest in her life beyond that. When I asked about her family, she seemed hesitant to dwell on the topic. She has 2 older brothers who work at Miller Manufacturing, but she's not fond of either of them. According to her, one's a sleazy salesman, and the other's a timid bookkeeper. Her dad's a decent guy, but he's always been busy working. Her mom, however, is a real piece of work, making life miserable for everyone, hence her dad's long hours at the plant. After spending over an hour discussing her, she asked me why I showed up to her tennis match in a suit, questioning if I knew anything about tennis. I explained that while I do play, it's not at her level. I was simply interested in seeing what she liked. As for the suit, I had an interview earlier that day for a summer internship, hopefully leading to a full-time job after graduation. I had scheduled it last month, knowing I'd be home for Christmas. "How'd the interview go?" she inquired. "Fantastic. I landed the summer internship, starting in June, with hopes of securing a full-time position upon graduation. Then came the moment I feared. "Which company?" she asked with caution. I revealed that I had met with the president of Miller Manufacturing. "What?" she exploded. "You did what? You met with my father?" Before I could explain, she unleashed a barrage of accusations. I had to intervene, firmly telling her to sit down and explaining the timing of the appointment. I emphasized that I wasn't using her to get to her dad. I asked her to take a moment to process it all and pleaded with her not to let this coincidence ruin our evening. The intensity in her eyes could have sliced me in two, like one of the plant's plasma cutters. She sat there taking deep breaths as if she'd just lost a tennis set. Finally, she spoke up. "I get it, but still, what are the odds of you showing up out of nowhere the day before your appointment with my dad, and on the same day we start seeing each other? Pretty slim chances, right? Did my name come up in your conversation with him?" I confirmed, yes, it did. She rolled her eyes and shot me that intense glare again. "And? Your dad asked if we were in the same class and if I knew you. I mentioned we were in the same class but didn't hang out together. That's about it. He mentioned I didn't seem like the typical guys who came over to see you. I wanted to give you a heads up before your dad brings up his new summer intern. Didn't want you to be caught off guard." "I appreciate that, Jeff. It was considerate of you to let me know beforehand. But what does this mean for us dating?" I held her hand and explained, "I genuinely enjoy spending time with you. You're the most fascinating person I've been with. I really want us to keep moving forward. Working temporarily for your dad this summer isn't a big deal. Heck, he might even fire me on the first day. Let's just see where things take us. Are you okay with that?" She smiled and agreed. "You're focused on your industrial engineering goal, and I'm focused on tennis. We might go our separate ways eventually, but for now, let's just enjoy being together. Speaking of which, let's head back to the apartment." But alas, all good things come to an end. Elizabeth had a tear in her eyes. We both had to head back to school. We kept in touch daily, initially through phone calls and then emails. We even exchanged Valentine's Day cards with expressions of love. June 1st marked my first day at Miller Manufacturing as their summer intern, the company's very first one. Work was enjoyable. Learning how the parts were made and the engineering behind each product was fascinating. The guys at the plant treated me well, appreciating my interest in their work. Having my dad as a department head surely didn't hurt either. Mr. Miller agreed to my suggestion of having lower-level workers clean the shop at the end of the day instead of the mainline workers. One day in mid-June, as I was sweeping the floor near closing time, I heard a female voice say, "A janitor? My boyfriend is a janitor? Oh my God, how embarrassing for me." I turned around to find a stunning Elizabeth in a colorful sundress, looking amazing. I moved to hug her, but she pushed me back, saying, "I don't hug dirty janitors. Maybe I'd hug a clean, bright young intern if he's willing to take me out to dinner." I replied, I'll make sure a clean, bright intern meets you wherever and whenever you say. 6 p.m. at my parents' house. Let's see if he can find his way around the nicer part of town. If not, I'm leaving at 6:05, she said. I'll pass that along, I assured her. With that, she turned so fast that her dress flew up, showing off her tan, muscular legs. The guys in the shop laughed at the scene. I knew I wouldn't live this down. My car pulled into the Miller home driveway at 5:45 p.m. I wasn't going to be late to meet Elizabeth. She saw me arrive but didn't open the door. Fine, I thought. At 5:55 p.m., I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Thankfully, I was dressed in nice khaki slacks and my best dress shirt. A well-dressed woman answered the door and asked, "May I help you?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Jeffrey Mullen, here to see Miss Elizabeth Miller," I replied. With a slight grin, she said, "Mr. Mullen, Miss Elizabeth is expecting you. Please have a seat." Exactly at 6, Elizabeth came downstairs, smiled at me, and remarked, "I thought you wouldn't show up. The janitor usually doesn't come to the chairman of the board's front door." "You're right, janitors don't, but the first ever summer intern does," I said. "Shall I introduce you to my parents?" Elizabeth asked. "I'd be delighted," I replied. Elizabeth led me to the family room where her father was reading, and her mother was watching TV. "Father, Mother, I'd like you to meet my date for the evening, Mr. Jeffrey Mullen," Elizabeth announced. I greeted Mr. Miller with a nod and said, "Good evening, sir." He smiled back and greeted me warmly. Then I turned to her mother and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Miller." To which she sneered, "This is your janitor friend? Surely you could find someone with higher expectations?" Elizabeth quickly replied, "Oh, Mother, I believe Jeffrey has high expectations, so much so that you needn't wait up for me tonight." I felt like I was about to sink through the floor. Why was she putting me on the spot like this? It was totally unexpected. Elizabeth took my arm gently and whispered, "Come on, Jeffrey. It's been a while since I've seen you." I turned to the surprised couple and said, "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller. Good night, sir." Mrs. Miller just harped while Mr. Miller smirked and said, 7:30 tomorrow morning, right, Jeff?" I replied, "Yes, sir." Elizabeth was laughing so hard she could barely catch her breath as we got into the car. I was shocked, unsure whether to be angry, embarrassed, or just laugh along. I asked her, "What was that all about? Why did you do that to me? Why did you do that to them? I just don't get what the point of all that was." Between laughs, Elizabeth explained, "It was a demonstration to my mother of why we're together. Your quick wit and ability to handle yourself in any situation. Like tonight when you were thrown to the wolves with Mrs. Miller, you remained cool, calm, and collected. I couldn't have scripted your response any better. From Marjorie at the door to Mother's reaction, you handled it perfectly. I'm glad that pleases you, Elizabeth. I enjoy our time together, whether it's in or out of bed, but I'm concerned about my job tomorrow. How will your father react to your bold antics? My job is important to me, just as your tennis is to you. Could you please consider my feelings and aspirations? What's important to you matters to me. Can I get the same consideration from you?" Elizabeth replied, "I'm used to getting my way, Jeff, but I'll try to think about your feelings before I cause you any trouble." Changing the subject, I asked, "I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. What's been going on?" "Absence makes the heart grow fonder." "Does that answer your question?" she teased. "I've definitely missed you these past few months, Elizabeth." "I'm glad to hear that, Jeff. It makes me feel valued by you." Once we were seated at the town's best steakhouse, I proposed a toast to Elizabeth being in town and making it more beautiful. After a sip of red wine, I asked, "How long will you be in town and why did you stop by without contacting me?" It was an unplanned trip. Father needed me to sign some corporate papers because I'm on the board of Miller Manufacturing, remember? As you try to impress me tonight, I'm also your boss at Miller Manufacturing. It would be a shame for me to give you a poor performance on any references. Trying to feign surprise, I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." Elizabeth responded with a knowing smile, saying, "Like hell you didn't." I raised my glass, tapped hers, and smiled back. She knew that I had done my research and learned that Elizabeth, John, and Sam each had 30% of the stock, while several older workers had a combined 10%. Mr. Miller retained the voting rights to all their stock. Because I had to be at work by 7:30 a.m., and Elizabeth didn't get much sleep last night, we didn't have a chance to talk or be intimate that morning. She flew out just before noon that day to work at tennis camps in Wisconsin for the summer. She did a mix of teaching, babysitting, housekeeping, and of course, playing lots of tennis. We kept in touch through letters, phone calls, and emails, but we didn't see each other until Christmas. She had her life, and I had mine. The rest of my summer was all about learning the precision parts manufacturing business. Miller Manufacturing had been in the industry for a long time and had a solid client list, especially in the aircraft business. They had significant contracts with Boeing, Spirit Aerosystems, and Cessna. John Miller, the head of marketing at Miller Manufacturing, was the eldest son of Robert Miller and Elizabeth's older brother. He saw me as a major annoyance, especially after learning I was Elizabeth's boyfriend. He made a point to disrespect his sister, referring to her as the bossy sister with high heels, or simply bossy. Despite being 8 years older than Elizabeth, she took pleasure in getting under his skin whenever she could. According to Robert, John didn't know much about marketing precision manufactured parts. He stuck to the outdated salesman tactics of the 60 seconds and 70 seconds. Get them drunk, get them laid, then get them signed. Despite knowledgeable order buyers going directly to the shop foreman for parts and specifications, John spent company funds on drinking and partying in the company's name. Robert tolerated it because John was family, and he believed John, his wife, and kids would struggle if he had to work elsewhere. The middle brother, Sam, was a sad case. He was quiet, difficult to communicate with, and completely incompetent in his role as material procurement manager. Sometimes the entire plant had to shut down because Sam failed to order the right materials for manufacturing. Outside of work, he spent his time drinking and fishing, and his attendance at work was inconsistent. According to John, Sam claimed he was offended by Bossy and lacked the strength to stand up to her. Bossy allegedly broke him after catching him doing things in the bathroom with a muscle magazine that concealed a Playboy magazine. She spread rumors that it was a not straight magazine, and Sam couldn't refute it. He was unmarried and kept to himself. Using my curious nature, I stumbled upon new techniques and products for Miller Manufacturing. Just tinkering around, I came up with a faster way to release farm equipment from tractors. Excited, I shared my idea with Dad and mentioned bringing it to Robert's attention. Dad warned me, saying, "Don't bother. Robert will pass it on to John, who'll likely laugh it off and toss it aside. Even if Robert asks John about it, John will just pass it on to Sam to figure out the costs, and it'll end up going nowhere. Many workers here have good ideas that never see the light of day." I considered patenting it myself for the company, but I knew it would meet the same fate. Since one of my college classes focused on patents, I decided to go solo. I formed Mullen Marketing LLC, using my spare time to build and test the prototype. I sought out a patent attorney through Craig, a local lawyer I knew. By the end of summer, I had filed 4 patent applications. During this time, Elizabeth and I stayed in touch through emails and calls. Her world was all about tennis, while mine was centered on engineering. We managed to spend a night together during Christmas when Robert took the family on a trip to Naples, Florida. It was a sweet reunion, filled with intimacy, conversations about the future, and a rekindled spark between us. While preparing for my final college exams, my attorney called with news about my patents. "Would you take $250,000 for your quick release patent?" "Absolutely," I exclaimed. He explained that I could also negotiate for a $1 per unit royalty for 10 years, potentially earning more. He warned me to keep it quiet, knowing John Miller might try to interfere. He suggested depositing the money into Mullen Marketing discreetly. He also presented me with another opportunity, a foreclosed home the bank wanted to sell. Despite needing cosmetic work, it was structurally sound. With some of the patent money as a down payment, I became a homeowner. Robert Miller and I struck a deal for me to become a full-time employee at Miller Manufacturing as the chief engineering officer. While the salary wasn't as high as some of my classmates, I saw great potential for success in this position. Being young and driven, I put in a solid 45-hour work week and then focused on renovating my new home. There was no time for leisure activities like parties, golfing, or dating. I did my best to stay in touch with Elizabeth, but she was busy with her tennis tour, making it hard to reach her. One day, she unexpectedly dropped by while I was painting the living room. The house was in disarray with drop cloths everywhere. Her first words were, "What kind of mess are you making here?" I retorted, "I'm aiming for more of a love shack vibe than a mess." Her response was harsh, criticizing my taste and calling the place embarrassing. She suggested I hire someone to finish the remodeling quickly. I reminded her of my job responsibilities and the pressure from board members. I obliged her request to get a room at the Hyatt, and we enjoyed our time together that evening. Elizabeth had a habit of showing up unannounced between tennis tournaments during the summer. We'd spend time together before she disappeared again for weeks. Once, while doing laundry at my place, she accidentally spilled a package of protection from her suitcase. She brushed it off, saying, "Better safe than sorry." I wanted to be upset, but I knew we weren't committed, so I let it go. Sometimes I accompanied her to tournaments when it was convenient. During one of these trips, I noticed other guys approaching her, but she dismissed them. It seemed like if I weren't there, she'd be socializing more. Despite the distance, we kept our relationship going until the tennis tours ended. My job was going really well. I introduced several new procedures that made the plant run more smoothly and boosted profits. As I delved deeper into our products, I kept coming up with more ideas for patents. By the end of the first year, I had saved up quite a bit of money. This setup benefited Miller Manufacturing since I paid the standard labor rate for our staff working on my projects and paid full price for materials and supplies. When I marketed these patents, I made sure the initial manufacturing run was done at Miller Manufacturing. In fact, I was bringing in more new business than our marketing director. When Elizabeth visited next, my house was far from being a mess. She was stressed from the road and decided to leave her dad's medical plan. Needing more downtime without losing her winnings, she didn't want to stay with her parents. So I came up with an idea. I proposed marriage to her, suggesting that she could have health benefits, relax in a peaceful setting, and be with someone who cared about her. To my surprise, she accepted. Planning the wedding turned into chaos. Elizabeth and her mother clashed fiercely over the type of wedding they wanted. Her mother preferred a high society affair, while Elizabeth wanted a more casual event with tennis players and sorority sisters. During a meeting, they argued non-stop, ignoring my mother's suggestions. Mrs. Miller still referred to me as the janitor boy. In the end, we eloped to Las Vegas, and despite the drama, we were overjoyed. Life was great for a couple of years while Elizabeth continued her tennis tour. Although she wasn't earning much, she received generous dividends from her Miller Manufacturing stock. When I jokingly asked for a share, she threatened to have me fired or demoted back to janitor. A few months later, she called me in tears and shouting. I couldn't make out what she was saying. When I asked if I should come over, she said yes, so I hopped on a flight that same night. When I arrived at her hotel room, I found her with her right leg raised and an ice pack on it. It seemed like she might have either torn or stretched her ACL. We decided it was best to seek medical attention back home rather than on the road. Our doctor thought her ACL might be stretched, not torn, but an MRI was needed to confirm. During the prep for the MRI, the nurse asked if she could be pregnant. Elizabeth replied, "No, I'm on birth control." The nurse insisted on a pregnancy test for women of her age before the MRI. When Elizabeth came out of the bathroom, she looked pale. "This can't be right. I'm not pregnant. I can't be. I'm on birth control and we use protection." She stopped mid-sentence. What did she mean by we use protection when she's not with me? I needed to tread carefully here. The nurse tried another pregnancy test, but the results were the same. Elizabeth was devastated. "Please, not now, not me," she sobbed. I tried to reassure her that everything would be okay, especially since she would need almost a year to recover before she could return to competitive tennis. Despite her injury, Elizabeth found a job as the girls' high school tennis coach. While she couldn't play, she excelled in teaching the girls' tennis strategy beyond just hitting the ball back. Her team even won the state meet in their class. She used the school's athletic equipment to rehab and strengthen her knee. Saying that Elizabeth wasn't thrilled about being pregnant would be an understatement. As her belly grew, so did her complaints. She found fault with everything. Her breasts got larger, and when I asked if she planned to breastfeed, she scoffed, saying, "No way. These award-winning watermelons will just turn into empty sacks hanging down." Her delivery didn't go smoothly, and she was in labor for quite a while. I was there in the delivery room when the nurse announced, "You're the proud mother of 2 baby boys." In her medicine-induced haze, she asked, "Are they black? Are they black? They can't be black." "No, they're white," the nurse replied, a bit irritated. Once again, doubts about her fidelity arose, but there was no proof yet. While still in the hospital, she asked the doctor to perform a tubal ligation so she couldn't get pregnant again. I suggested it would be easier for me to get a vasectomy, but she insisted on having her tubes tied. It occurred to me that if I got a vasectomy, she could still get pregnant by someone else. Maybe her desire for sterilization wasn't about me, but about her own intentions. When we brought Cameron and Cody home, my mother and grandmother were there to help. Elizabeth lacked maternal skills, so she welcomed their assistance. My grandmother, a lively 70-year-old, adored babies, and spent most days at our house from 8 to 5 for the first 2 months. Elizabeth was thrilled to have her own personal nanny. She continued with physical therapy to rehab her knee and prepare for competitive tennis. After a year, my mother retired from teaching to become a full-time babysitter for us. Elizabeth was back on her feet and playing tennis again. With her mobility restored, Elizabeth immersed herself in tennis matches, tournaments, clinics, and symposiums. After all, she was wealthy, unemployed, and had others to take care of her family duties. Considering my existing doubts about her fidelity, I hired a private investigator to track her car's location and record audio. They also hacked into her cell phone to monitor texts and emails. It was expensive, but so is a divorce. Her attitude didn't get any better, and she found fault with everything in our house, from the paint colors to the closet space. Nothing seemed to meet her standards. Even my family heirlooms were banished to storage, as if anything connected to me wasn't good enough for her home. I tried to pitch in with household chores, but I just ended up irritating her more. Every task, from folding towels to taking out the trash, was met with criticism and belittlement. No matter what I did, she couldn't be pleased. Once my mother left for the day, taking care of the boys became my only source of happiness at home. Living in a middle-class neighborhood wasn't to her liking. She felt superior to everyone there, especially with her generous dividends from Miller. She spent extravagantly, even joining the country club. While she lunched there daily, I worried about our neglected children. Our once passionate bed life dwindled to almost nothing. The evidence for divorce was mounting, but escaping seemed impossible. She had me trapped, knowing I couldn't bear to leave the boys or risk losing my job at Miller Manufacturing, where she held ownership. Meanwhile, my private investigator uncovered her infidelity. I dreaded the thought of her coming home drunk and expecting intimacy, especially knowing she might still be carrying another man's DNA. At my investigator's suggestion, I bought a discreet toy to gather evidence of her affairs. Instead of cleaning it after use, I sent it to a lab to check for DNA markers left behind by someone else. My unexpected solution came from the real estate market. She decided we needed to upgrade to a multi-million-dollar home in the country club area. Despite the hefty payments devouring her dividends, she was fixated on this house, perhaps because it surpassed her mother's in size and cost. Meanwhile, I was focused on acquiring pricey CNC machines through my LLC to lease to Miller. With Robert Miller gone, I practically ran the plant, with John mostly delegating responsibilities to me. I secured a new title as operational manager and negotiated a job description, giving me autonomy, including authority to make equipment purchases up to $500,000 without board approval. Mullen Machine would buy the machines and lease them to Miller, addressing our pressing need to stay competitive. Despite Mullen Machine's profitability, I still needed a loan for the equipment due to necessary plant improvements, reducing dividends. My banker revealed a roadblock. I couldn't secure the equipment loan if I was tied to the note for the new house. Likewise, she couldn't obtain a loan without demonstrating my income. Stuck in a deadlock, Craig proposed a postnuptial agreement. The postnup resembled a friendly divorce settlement, wherein I relinquished all financial claims to her personal assets, including her Miller Manufacturing stock. I wouldn't be on the mansion's deed or loan, but I'd pay her rent monthly, equivalent to half the house payment, plus insurance and taxes. Craig strategically structured it to imply lifelong payments mirroring a divorce settlement, yet in reality, it was temporary. This allowed me to expand Mullen Marketing LLC without hindrance. To her and her attorney, I seemed to possess only my modest LLC and personal belongings, making me appear financially inconsequential. However, unbeknownst to them, her company's stock was depreciating, making it harder for her to meet financial obligations. She had inadvertently trapped herself in a financial bind, unaware of her dwindling assets. While arranging the postnup, I suspected her attorney might have been involved with her intimately or desired to be, hence letting her take the lead. She believed she knew it all and didn't require any guidance. With the asset split done, I turned my attention to John Miller's stock. He was drowning in debt from overspending on booze, drugs, fast cars, and women, living beyond his means. His wife, Sherry, sensing trouble, reached out to me for help in curbing his spending. She feared their marriage was on the brink, one misstep away from divorce. Despite John's dismissive attitude, I assured him of my support and care, even offering assistance in the future. A month later, John found himself in a dire situation, arrested for DUI with pills. Desperate, he needed $1 million to escape the clutches of his debts and potential danger in jail. I offered him a loan against his stock, providing him a lifeline. In return, he signed over all his stock and voting rights to me, with the option to repurchase it within a year at the same price, no interest. His gratitude was immense, but his new venture into professional gambling ensured he wouldn't reclaim his stock in time. The bank used my Miller Manufacturing and LLC stocks as collateral for the loan. Craig drafted the agreement and praised me for gaining control of John's stock. With 40% ownership, including employee shares, I was close to having the majority. Sam Miller started assigning me more procurement tasks. Seeing his distress, I asked him what was troubling him. Sam explained he couldn't handle the pressure anymore, maxed out on antidepressants and feared a stroke. Grateful for my help to his brother, he confided in me. I assured Sam I'd assist him however I could. I asked him about his long-term goals. Sam expressed his desire to live peacefully in his secluded home, spending his days fishing and hunting without any stress, expectations, or drama. I asked if he was interested in selling his Miller Manufacturing stock to me. No, Sam replied. I've tried, but nobody wants to buy it, especially with John and Elizabeth controlling the stock. They'll likely mistreat minority shareholders like they do me. If I sold, I'd have to worry about investing wisely for my future. Instead, could you pay me a monthly amount for life in exchange for my stock? I can do that, Sam. How much do you need each month? Jeff, $10,000 would suffice for me to live comfortably. I can manage that, Sam. Let me handle the paperwork and you can tidy up your office and resign. Thanks, Jeff. You're a great friend for helping me out. Craig was overjoyed when I mentioned the lifetime contract to pay Sam $10,000 million monthly. He nearly yelled, Sam would need almost 50 years to get the full stock value. Plus, Sam's not well, he won't live 10 years. True, Craig, but he'll enjoy those 10 years. With this setup, I now fully controlled Miller Manufacturing. Craig exclaimed, Congratulations. Thanks, Craig. Your legal skills in drafting these agreements are invaluable. Elizabeth doesn't control me or the boys anymore. It's time to turn the tables on her. Elizabeth didn't think much of my first house in town, even after I put in a lot of effort to fix it up. Instead of selling it, I kept it as a rental, but the last tenants moved out 5 months ago, which turned out to be fortunate for me and the boys. In early September, while Elizabeth was at the US Open tennis tournament in New York, I moved our personal items from the mansion back to our old home without any trouble. By evening, the boys and I were settled in. They stopped asking about Mommy because she was hardly around, and when she was, she frightened them. Despite trying to reach her at inconvenient times when she might be with someone else, I either got her voicemail or a brief dismissal with no return calls. Once all our stuff was out of the mansion, I left a note for Elizabeth informing her that I wouldn't be providing the September rent check since I had moved out. The next morning at the office, I had Sally send a 14-day notice to all stockholders for a meeting. We'd be discussing changes in stock ownership, leadership, and approving third-quarter dividends. Sally asked, There's a lot happening here that I don't know about. Can you fill me in just in case someone asks? I've got exciting news, Sally. I now own all of John and Sam's Miller Manufacturing stock and control 70% of the voting rights. Elizabeth only has 30%, so she's irrelevant now. Sally was thrilled and said, I've hated that witch since she was in high school. When Elizabeth got back from New York and read my note about leaving her house, she flipped out. She called me yelling, You've got to pay that rent. I need it for my payments. If you don't cough up, I'll boost my dividends to cover it and I'll make sure your paycheck takes the hit. You're messing up big time, messing with the company owner. It was clear she hadn't talked to her brothers about their stock transfer. And I knew she hadn't bothered to read the notice for the upcoming stockholders meeting. At the meeting, it was just me holding 60% of the stock, my dad representing the employees' 10% share, Craig, the new corporate attorney, and Sally, the longtime board secretary. Elizabeth's 30% ownership wasn't represented. First, we approved the transfer of stock from John and Sam Miller to me. Second, I got promoted to president and chairman of the board. Third, we decided not to dish out any dividends due to lower earnings and increased equipment purchases. All motions passed with flying colors. Meeting over. As soon as my dad left, Elizabeth barged in with her lawyer shouting, Get out of my father's chair, you jerk! You're fired. Scram. Turns out her nosy lawyer heard rumors about ownership changes and called Elizabeth to check. That's when she finally read the notice about the stockholders meeting. Too bad for her, it was already done and dusted. She growled, Where are my brothers? You don't have their proxy. I responded, I don't need their proxies. I bought their shares, and the voting rights are mine now. This confrontation was expected, so I gave her copies of the stock transfers, all notarized and approved unanimously by most of the stockholders at the meeting. Her lawyer snatched the papers, huffed, and said, This is crazy, I'll tear you apart in court. It was all just a show for his client, and we both knew it. My sharp corporate secretary had the meeting minutes ready, and I enjoyed handing them to Elizabeth. I pointed out, See here, where the stock transfer got approved, now I'm president and chairman of the board. And look behind you at the wall, there's the chairman's portraits, your granddad, your dad, and now me. Reality hit her hard. She couldn't handle the mansion payment, the car bills, country club fees, or even groceries. She never saved any of her dividends. Her stock was her savings, but no one would buy a 30% share with no dividends. Jeff, I'll have your favorite steak dinner brought over from the country club. Will you join me? Let's talk and figure this out. I hope we can avoid a divorce, especially with the kids to think about, she said. Sounds good. Let's say 6:30, I replied. It seemed she was really desperate now, bringing the boys into it after all the crap she put me through. The affairs she had without a care. I was eager for this conversation. At 6:29, the doorbell rang, and Elizabeth answered the door, looking all dolled up. Her makeup and hair were flawless, and she wore a silk dress that showed off her figure. Jeffrey, you didn't need to ring the doorbell. This is your home," she said. "I was just worried I might be interrupting something," I replied. "Oh, no interruption at all, Jeff. How about a glass of wine?" she offered. "Yes, please," I accepted politely. She got right down to business, saying, "You didn't exactly exceed my expectations at Miller Manufacturing, but you fast-tracked things by about 20 years. How did you manage to get my useless brothers to sell their stock to you? It was a stroke of genius. Now we control the whole company, just you and me. I've got some champagne chilling for a toast after dinner to celebrate this brilliant achievement." Elizabeth, it took a lot of hard work and being in the right place at the right time to pull it off. With you gone so much, I had plenty of time to focus. But just so we're clear, the reason the boys and I moved out is because I'm filing for divorce later this week. This won't be a shared company anymore. I have the majority stock, and my decisions will be final. You can keep your stock and be on the board if you want, but we won't be paying out dividends for at least a year. I explained. "You can't do that, Jeff. That's my only income. How will I survive?" "How could you do this to your loving wife?" she protested. "My dear, you've been quite loving, though not to me," I responded. "Jeff, I may hang out with some guys, but I've stayed faithful to you." "Just ask anyone in town," Elizabeth claimed. "Elizabeth, for the past year, I've had a private investigator tailing you at all your tennis events. You've got quite a following. His folder is filled with loads of photos and videos that prove your statement is false," I countered. Her face went pale. She needed a new angle. "If you're divorcing me, Jeff, you'll have to cough up alimony and child support. Staying married to me would be cheaper for you," she argued with satisfaction. I replied, "Remember our post-nuptial agreement? Your lawyer made sure I wouldn't get a slice of your assets in case of divorce. You were shielding yourself from me, and now that shield protects me too. So, no alimony. With your Miller Manufacturing stock valued at $6 million, the judge won't order alimony." She grinned, thinking she had a plan. "Perfect. Just pay me the $6 million and I'll be on my way." I grinned back. "Sorry, babe. I don't need your stock to run the show. My 70% already beats your 30%. Your stock is practically worthless now. No dividends for you either. I'll vote myself a fat bonus if I need cash. The employees will get hefty bonuses before you see a dime. I'll turn this place into a top-notch modern manufacturing hub, using the profits. And to get you out of my hair, I'll buy your stock for 100 grand. That's about what a minority stake in this company is worth." I continued, "You won't get any child support since the boys live with me. They're scared of you. I've been keeping track of the nights you've spent here. How can you be there for the boys when you're out of town most of the year? Plus, the PI has evidence of your cheating, photos and videos, and I've got DNA records from the man's material you brought home from your affairs. Once, there were samples from 3 different guys. You're a danger to the household, spreading STDs. The PI has names and can bring men to court to testify. You're promiscuous. You won't get custody of the boys. Do you really want all that dirty laundry aired in court? I won't let you smear the Miller name. Why are you doing this to me, Jeff? I've loved you for years. Why?" she pleaded. "Why?" I shot back. "You slept with countless men after we got married. You disappeared for weeks without a word. You only cared about yourself. The boys and I meant nothing to you. Now you mean nothing to us. Goodbye, Elizabeth." I walked out the door, free and happy, a content father. Elizabeth couldn't make the next house or Mercedes payment. She tried selling the house, but it'll take months to sell unless she slashes the price. She doesn't have much equity in it. People who served her said she packed her bags and left town. The house is heading to foreclosure, and her car is getting repossessed. Meanwhile, I'm in control of a profitable company with $20 million in capital, and I'll never have to deal with her again. My PI made contacts in the tennis world while tailing Elizabeth. Word is she's in Vegas, playing tennis without clothes. She and other women play, sometimes against paying customers. With her looks, she's the star of this live XXX tennis show, a big hit in Vegas. Next, it's dancing at a sleazy club or working at a Vegas brothel once her tennis days are over.
Story 2.
My wife cheated on me. My daughter helped cover it up, so I divorced her, got revenge, and moved on. Life's unexpected twists and turns can make that happen. To those who stayed in touch, I appreciate it. There isn't enough time for the love you send. Seasons change, and so have I. You don't need to wonder why. There's no time left. No time left for you. Picture a typical family. I'm the father, Trevor Fruiton, a 45-year-old guy with a receding hairline, in decent shape but no six-pack abs. I could stand to lose 10 lbs and prefer contacts over glasses. I still don't need reading glasses. The mother of the family, Michelle, is also 45 and has a slight tummy and a well-rounded figure, a look I prefer. She's an average woman, not strikingly beautiful or ugly, who wears glasses and insists on her full name. Then there's our 21-year-old daughter, Allie, a smart college senior who's gained some weight since her high school volleyball days. She's fiercely independent and vocal about women's rights, though she still relies on us. I'm the only one working, and finances have been tight. I didn't want Allie burdened with student debt, so she lives at home. But that doesn't mean Michelle or Allie don't enjoy nice things. I drive an old F-150 while they have fancy luxury cars. Our home has little equity, and they funded their lifestyle with home equity loans. Our neighborhood is like many suburban areas with occasional block parties. We're not particularly close to our neighbors, except for the neighbors next door, whose daughter Sally is Allie's best friend. After Allie started college, I felt lost. We had spent so much time together, and now there was a void. Even my volunteer work didn't seem to help. So one night, I asked her if she was happy. I inquired, "Michelle, are you happy?" She replied, "Happy with what?" I continued, "Your life. You've pulled away from me and lost your spark. I miss the time we used to spend with Allie. I guess I'm bored. How about us? Is there something I'm doing or not doing for you?" Michelle assured me, "We're fine. I have no complaints. Why all the questions?" I just wanted her to be happy. "Maybe you can find a counselor to help you find balance and improve your mood." I pondered her suggestion. "I'm not sure. I'll think about it." With a little chill in the air, I dropped the subject. However, 2 weeks later, Michelle started weekly sessions with a life coach. You might think that I hoped things would heat up in our bedroom, but no. We maintained our usual twice-a-week intimate schedule. Are we normal? I have no idea. I've never discussed my life in bed with anyone, and I don't pry into my friends' intimate details. Mark and Cindy, our neighbors to the south, are in their 60s. Mark is not the handiest guy, and Cindy loves to bake, which has led to a few extra pounds for me. One day I was working on Mark's sauna pump and overheard a conversation. They discussed, "Our sliding patio door is making that scratching noise again. Unless Michelle is back from her mother's, it must be Ally." I haven't seen him in a while, so I'm sitting in the backyard gazebo. I overheard Allie's conversation. She mentioned, "He's inside somewhere. His car is still here." I couldn't believe my ears as I heard her say, "God, Mom, you're outdated. Give Max a try. Sally says he's a wild one, and make sure you're satisfied. Maybe this is what you need to spice things up in the bedroom. You've been complaining to our daughter about our love life? That's just not right." I know. You should think about it. By the way, Dad told me he's going hunting next weekend. I'll have Jeff invite Max over. He might be scrawny, but he's into you. Sally also mentioned that his size is just right for some fun. I was fuming, thinking, so my daughter is trying to set Michelle up with Jeff's friend. You don't have to do anything, but since you've never tried anything like that, consider experimenting with Max. I was seething, and the next pause was due to my boiling anger. The bee and her offspring are plotting to end my marriage. What did I do to deserve this? Okay, well, let me know. Love you too. Bye-bye. I was really angry. Unfortunate I didn't injure myself while fixing that frustrating pump. Things were miserable at home all week. I went out of my way to annoy Michelle and Ally. It worked, and I spent most of the week in my office or out in the garage. I also sharpened and cleaned my power tools. I didn't postpone my hunting trip, though. I had someone keep an eye on Michelle's activities. Seeing pictures of Allie, Jeff, and a skinny guy entering the house around noon on Saturday wasn't a good sign. Allie and Jeff left around 2, and the skinny guy left at 4. When I returned late Sunday, Michelle was trying to be affectionate, but I wasn't having it. While it didn't confirm anything, I noticed Michelle was sitting strangely, with her legs crossed and leaning left more than usual. She seemed a bit uncomfortable. Later in the kitchen, Allie sealed their fate by playfully slapping Michelle behind, and they both giggled with fake coughs. I felt a weight on my chest and worried that the people I was hunting with might have exposed me to something. I decided to sleep on the living room couch to avoid Michelle. In the morning, I announced that I was going to the doctor with a fake illness, claiming I had trouble breathing. My boss had no issue with me taking the day off. My plan was to pretend to have COVID, which would give me time to move forward with my exit strategy. With accumulated sick leave and vacation time, I could take enough time off to reach our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Announcing a COVID diagnosis usually keeps people at bay. Did I actually have COVID? I wasn't sure. I was fully vaccinated and felt healthy, but my heart was broken, and I wanted to part ways with 4 people. While my lungs were fine, I checked into an extended stay hotel. There was no reason for me to live like a pauper. Michelle seemed relieved when I told her I'd be out of quarantine in time for Christmas Eve. She and her daughter called me twice a day to avoid revealing my plans. I was polite but pretended to be tired to get off the phone. I spent my time plotting revenge and making preparations, like updating wills, beneficiaries, and emergency contacts. Apartment hunting was challenging and drove home the finality of my decision to divorce Michelle and push Ally into the real world. When you're consumed by anger, all sorts of thoughts cross your mind. Most of them could land me in jail, which didn't align with my future plans. The idea of hiring an escort to trap Jeff came from watching a news story about a company that did the same to get rid of unwanted employees. It was a double-edged sword that would also hurt Ally, which, in my opinion, she deserved. Our artificial tree was lit up with blinking red, white, and green lights, and pine cones gave off a holiday scent. We gathered around the dining room table for our Christmas Eve tradition, which we had maintained for 23 years. The first 2 years were without Ally. Michelle had cooked a meal, which was now in front of us. Normally, we'd offer a short prayer of thanks, but not this time. I stood up to speak, but it wasn't going to be a cheerful toast. I began by asking Jeff about Heather, and as I did, his face lost color. Ally turned her curious gaze toward him. Ally and Jeff had been together since high school, and it seemed like they'd be together for many more years. Things were about to change, though, Jeff stammered, claiming he didn't know a Heather. I pressed further, mentioning the raven-haired beauty with ruby lips he was with last Sunday night. Jeff was as stunned as a deer in headlights. At this point, he resorted to denial, claiming he couldn't recall the name, but his words lacked conviction. I confronted him with an audio clip from my cell phone, where a voice could be heard saying, "Okay, Heather, you're awesome. Don't stop. God, I'm coming again." After turning off the recording, it was clear that the voice was Jeff's. Ally went into a rage, accusing him of deception and demanding that he leave. Before Jeff could get up, I stood behind him and pushed him back into his chair. Jeff and I prevented Ally from attacking him. I instructed Michelle to take our daughter into the other room and calm her down, explaining that I and Junior were going to have a talk. Michelle escorted Ally out of the dining room and into the kitchen. It wasn't done quietly, as Ally's string of 4-letter words echoed off the walls. It only took a few minutes to explain to Jeff how things would unfold. He was to warn Max to stay far away from me, or Max would deeply regret his existence as a man. Jeff understood where he stood and what limited options he had. From my perspective, a manila envelope moved, and Jeff agreed to do one last thing for me. I called out to the kitchen, asking Michelle to come back in. With Ally, they both looked shocked and tearful. "Let me explain how I got that recording, Jeff. Her name isn't Heather, and I don't know her real name. She's an expensive escort. I must add, I hired her to seduce you and record the encounter. There's also a video if you'd like to watch it." Ally exclaimed, "Daddy, what the hell, you hired her?" I admitted I did, sweetie. How does it feel to be betrayed? You know, stabbed in the back. Michelle made a tiny noise, and Ally's eyes briefly darted toward and away from her mother. Both women were in tears. "Jeff, do you have something to say?" I turned on the video mode of my cell phone camera. Jeff stood up, took the folder in front of him, and then addressed Michelle. "Michelle Fruiton, you've been served," he said as he handed the folder to Michelle. I wasn't sure if she would vomit or faint. She would likely do one or the other shortly after regaining her composure. The pine cones couldn't compete with the impact of Jeff handing Michelle divorce papers. While Ally and Michelle consoled each other in the master bedroom, I took charge outside. Ally's early graduation gift was loaded onto a carrier and driven away. Everything from her car was left in a trash bag on the front porch. Michelle's BMW followed soon after. But the difference was that her things were moved to a 23-year-old sedan, symbolizing our 23 years of marriage. My lawyer reminded me that I still had to provide transportation for Michelle. With our credit cards paid off and canceled, both of Ally's cards were canceled since I was the CO signer. I took another shot of bourbon. Cell phones were canceled as well. I had to give Michelle a basic phone with limited talk time and text messages. Ally received no such consideration. Both kept their iPhones with all the bells and whistles. In the garage, there was a for sale sign that I swiftly planted in the front yard with a few hits of my hammer. I couldn't actually sell the house yet since Michelle's name was on the title, but I wanted her to know what our future held. Instead of listening to the Christmas music playing in the living room by the tree, I retreated to the basement. Sitting in the dark was comforting at times, especially when I heard the commotion above me as they realized that none of their possessions were working. I was called some less than Christian names. Those names were mild compared to the ones I had been yelling in my empty hotel room while preparing for this day. "Trevor, we need to talk," was their statement. They speculated that maybe I went for a walk, noticing that my car was still at home. But my car was missing. They thought perhaps Dad had taken it, but he couldn't be driving both. They questioned the presence of an unfamiliar car in front of the house. Their phones weren't working, and they suspected I had canceled their service. They decided to go see if Cindy would let them use her phone. Calm returned to the house, but it was a tactical error on their part. I locked the entry doors. Now they were out of the house without working phones or credit cards. Both left their purses inside, so they had no identification on them. I felt no remorse when I shredded their driver's licenses. It may be petty, but I'm sure it will cause them discomfort as they try to rebuild their lives. Refilling my shot glass, I turned on the television and watched a few minutes of a cheesy feel-good special. Our situation couldn't be farther from the heartwarming story on screen. Sitting in silence seemed like a better choice. There was a commotion at the front door when Michelle and Allie returned. It was then that Michelle's daughter, whom I no longer claimed as my own, realized what was in the trash bag on the porch. Allie shrieked, "Oh my God, this is everything I had in my car. Daddy got rid of my car." Michelle wasn't buying it. He wouldn't do that. It's just not something he would do. "Well, Mom, maybe the reason your car is missing is that he sold it too. I'll be mad if he did. I love that car." With the doorbell ringing every 2 seconds, it was hard to catch all of their conversations. Michelle was furious. "Trevor, open this door right now. It's freezing out here." I shouted back at them, "Well, Mitch, the keys to your new car are in the ignition. That orange and green Malibu parked in front of the house is your new set of wheels. All your belongings from your old car have been moved over. I'm told the heater takes a while to warm up. It has a full tank of gas. Maybe you could offer your Estimax and stay at his place. He probably still has a thing for you." One yelped, "Liar," and the other said, "He knows." "Trevor, please let me explain." Michelle made a feeble attempt to extend the conversation. A few seconds of silence passed, and Michelle tried a sweeter voice. "Trevor, I know you can hear me. Say something." "Merry Christmas." "You better leave, Michi, and take that woman with you." A few minutes later, the old Malibu roared to life. It sounded like it needed a new muffler, but I wasn't surprised, as the guy practically gave me the car to get it off his hands. It wasn't getting fixed on my dime. Without any fanfare, the two traitors drove away from the house. It had been ages since I heard about anyone dying from carbon monoxide poisoning due to their muffler. Maybe I'd get lucky. Probably not. About an hour later, I noticed my father-in-law's phone number lighting up my cell phone. We've never been close, but we tolerate each other. After considering whether to answer, I let it go to voicemail. "Hey Trevor, I've got a couple of upset women here. Thought you might be able to shed some light on the situation. Call me. By the way, Merry Christmas." I muted my cell and sipped some spiked eggnog. Gradually, I came down from my adrenaline rush. The blinking lights of the fake tree put me to sleep. The sun was shining on this cold Christmas morning. All the dishes were still on the dining room table, but the microwave did a good job of heating up my ham and cheesy potatoes. Ham and cheesy potatoes work any time. There were gifts waiting to be opened, but Santa left me nothing, as those gifts under the tree were meant to be opened after dinner. Had anyone even noticed I hadn't given a single gift to any of them and I didn't open theirs? Instead, I gathered my most cherished belongings. I didn't include any photos of the family. Any that I found were now scattered on the ground. It took Michelle a few days to find me at my hotel. The sun had set, and there was a bitter breeze. I left the latch on when I answered the door. I half expected another poinsettia sales pitch for a youth sports team, but it was a pale-faced Michelle without her usual makeup or done-up hair. Michelle pleaded, "Trevor, please don't close the door." I didn't close it as I replied, "What do you want, Michi?" she asked, a chance to explain. "Can I come in?" I firmly responded, "No." She continued, "Please, Trevor, your neighbors don't need to hear this." I replied, "What part of no don't you understand? I'd be happy to explain it to you." Michelle sighed. "Okay, let me start by saying how sorry I am. I can't explain my actions." I asked, "What actions are you talking about, Michi? Please." She urged, "Trevor, not out here. Let me come in and talk about it." She revealed softly, having closeness with Max. I reacted, "You had something with Max? Well, don't that beat all?" Her eyes widened as I continued. "You didn't know?" She admitted, "I suspected, but now it's confirmed. Actions have consequences." "Wait, you were going to divorce me without any proof?" I replied. "Guessed right, didn't I? Have you found an attorney yet?" She responded, "I'm working on it, but we don't need a divorce. I'll do anything you want to save our marriage." I said, "A little late for that. Why didn't you decide to do anything to save our marriage a month ago?" "I know why. It's because you're selfish and think you're above consequences. You thought you could do whatever you wanted without repercussions. Did you tell me immediately? A day later? A week later? How many others have there been?" Michelle recoiled at the venom in my voice. "That was the only time. You have to believe me. One stupid decision shouldn't doom our marriage." I pressed, "Which stupid decision?" I count many. Planning to cheat might get you a reprieve. Cheating is a deal breaker. Hiding your cheating ensured no chance of reconciliation. Worst of all was involving your daughter, as I want nothing to do with her anymore. This is all on you. If you had kept your bedroom matters private, she would have never been involved. I hate you." Some of the neighbors were getting their kicks watching this drama unfold. I told her, "Trevor, I said I'm sorry. How can I make this up to you? You can't. I hope I'm better off without you. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't. But it's on my terms. Divorce your cheating self and move on, understand? Please, Trevor, I know you're hurting, angry, but please don't do anything for a couple of weeks. It was just one afternoon. What can I do to convince you?" I replied, "Just leave and never bother me again. Now, if you'll excuse me, halftime is over and the bowl game is starting again. Thanks for stopping by, not." I closed the door. Michelle knocked and begged softly, but my noise-canceling headphones did their job. I don't know how long it lasted, but she wasn't there in the morning. 11 months later, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, continuing the Christmas Eve tradition. Alone by choice, I prepared a simple meal that I cooked myself after getting the hang of cooking. They say you get stabbed in the back, but in reality, it shattered my heart, ego, and confidence. My self-respect, however, remained intact. Many nights I wondered if I overreacted. Not once did I agree with that thought. I became disposable, so I left. Case closed. My time in the limbo of divorce left me feeling defeated. I was often irritable, and my boss had to reprimand me for snapping at coworkers. As time passed, I withdrew from social life and became a recluse. My CO workers learned to keep their distance, and I focused on doing my job well. I skipped company parties. Friends attempted to set me up on dates, but I turned them down one by one, and eventually they stopped calling. My self-pity seemed never-ending. I took up running, and the sight of my earbuds discouraged people from approaching me. Between my new hobby and cooking for myself, I needed to put on some weight since none of my old clothes fit. Occasionally, a CO worker would compliment my appearance, but it rarely went beyond that. The divorce proceedings stretched out for 9 months, and our house sold quickly. Instead of monthly support, Michelle received a substantial share of the proceeds from the sale. Allie and Jeff went their separate ways, with Jeff blaming me for setting him up with Heather. It's always someone else's fault. I wasn't there with Heather, he was, and he was weak. Like most men his age, a seductive woman can easily lead them astray. As for Allie, she left me angry voicemails, but I never returned her calls. Maybe someday I'll answer, but I wouldn't bet on it. I neither received an invitation to her graduation nor attended it. The situation was particularly challenging for Michelle, as she hadn't held a full-time job since our marriage. My attorney prolonged the financial matters as much as possible. Once the house finally sold, I repaid all the money the court ruled she should have been receiving as maintenance. And now her comfortable lifestyle was gone. The same applied to mine. During some of the attorney conferences, Michelle tried to convince me that she had been incredibly foolish, but I remained stoic, which led to a few tears. Hate is a powerful emotion, and I couldn't seem to control mine. 12 months later, we continued the Christmas Eve tradition in my apartment. Macy, a friend who had been through a similar experience, joined me. No, we weren't in a romantic relationship. I wasn't ready for that yet. After we finished cleaning up the dishes, Macy led me to the middle of the living room, and we danced closely. At times, I missed the warmth of a willing woman against me. But after about 10 songs, Macy wiped away a tear and left. We were both damaged goods. Allie's tone in the voice messages she left about once a month changed. She sounded apologetic, but I never returned her calls. My mother accidentally revealed that Michelle had moved in with someone new. I was surprised that my reaction was mostly indifference. I started making small talk with people again. Former CO workers avoided me, and new ones thought I was weird. Making friends was challenging, but I managed to bridge the gap with Macy, and we remained friends. In late January, I received a letter from Allie. I debated whether to open it, but curiosity won. The letter contained a short note and a selfie. "Daddy, I'm sorry that I did you wrong. As you can see in the picture, I'm pregnant. I was wondering if you could find it in your heart to include a grandchild in your life. If not, I understand. Love, Allie." The return address was a few counties over, and there was no mention of a husband in the picture. I felt torn. I resented what she had done to my life, but I had always wanted grandchildren. It would be a few weeks before I responded. In the meantime, Macy and I parted ways. We both knew we were only there for each other to lean on. She decided to move far away and start over. With a few lingering hugs, she left my life. To keep from going crazy, I took up pickleball at the rec center. It's similar to tennis, but with different rules. Eventually, I played with people of similar abilities, which felt like junior high school. During one game, I accidentally hit Shannon, one of the players, and her friends teased her, suggesting I should kiss it to make it better. I blew her some kisses, and as we were heading out, she asked if I could buy her a soft drink. She said I was very quiet and shy. We walked to a nearby Jamba Juice and continued chatting, We learned about each other, and Shannon was a great conversationalist, unlike me. She eventually asked if I was seeing someone, and I admitted I wasn't, and I wasn't sure if I ever would again. Shannon inquired about my previous relationship. Did she die or leave you? I responded, she cheated on me, and I either couldn't or wouldn't accept it. It's been a few years, and, well, I guess I'm not over it. Shannon then asked, what about you? Are you dating anyone? I replied, no one. She seemed surprised. Really? I elaborated, I go on dates, but that's about it. When was the last time you went on a date? Shannon shared, well, I haven't been on a proper date since we separated. I've had people over for dinner, but that's it. I asked, when did your marriage end? She told me that was December, 26 months ago. Pretty sad, isn't it? I reassured her, not really. When I was dumped for a younger woman, it took me a couple of years to regain the confidence to try again. This entire conversation was making my palms sweaty. Shannon noticed. Let's change the subject, I suggested. Why did you start playing pickleball? Shannon explained, my self-pity was getting tiresome, so I thought I needed something new to do. I shared, that's how I got into it too. My friends convinced me, and I've come to enjoy it. How about you? Shannon said, yeah, I got a paddle and playing is helping me come out of my shell. Well, I have to run. See you tomorrow? I'm playing at 4 p.m. I replied, sure, nice chatting with you, Shannon. She offered some encouragement. You too, Trevor. Hang in there. Things will only get better. That evening, I felt good enough about myself to respond to Allie. Allie, I'm willing to try. You and I will never be close, but I'd like to at least meet my grandchild. Please let me know when the time is right. Under no circumstances will I be in the same room as your mother. Mr. Fruin, as Allie showed in the selfie, I estimated a May or June delivery date. I'm not sure if Allie received my response, as I haven't received another letter from her. The next day at pickleball, Shannon was quite flirtatious, as were a few other ladies. It felt good. After hitting a particularly good shot, Shannon said, you know, Trevor, you look really good in that shirt. I bet you look even better out of it. The women giggled as my face turned red. Funny you should say that, Shannon. I was thinking that you looked really good in those yoga pants. I bet you'd look even better out of them too, I responded. There was hysterical laughter as Shannon turned bright red. Then the ladies started chanting, take them off, or take them off, take them off. I obliged and took my shirt off. Shannon shook her head vigorously while wagging her finger at me as if I was in trouble. A few of the ladies whistled as I put my shirt back on. Shannon mouthed, you're terrible, at me. I blew her a kiss. After the games, there was some light-hearted banter among the ladies, with one of them joking about looking great out of yoga pants. Shannon impatiently waited her turn. I engaged in a friendly conversation, and eventually Shannon asked if I'd buy her a soft drink. I responded, I was just about to ask you. Shannon playfully remarked, nice yoga pants, huh? Pretty proud of yourself, aren't you? As we enjoyed our drinks, I mustered the courage to ask Shannon out for dinner and a movie. Fearing rejection, I was relieved when she thankfully agreed. Having been out of the dating scene for over 27 years, I felt clueless, awkward, and scared. Initially, it was hard, but with time, I began to relax, and my previous upbeat personality started to emerge. After several dates, Shannon suggested I spend the night. One evening, Shannon surprised me with a personal question. She asked, who were you thinking of when we were intimate? I had to pause and appreciate her. You, I replied. I wondered what you saw in a person like me. I see a mirror reflection, Shannon said with a smile. Our passionate connection grew, and we became more intimate with time. Shannon eventually introduced me to her family and grandchildren, which was initially awkward due to their protective nature. However, as time passed, they accepted me. In early June, Shannon cuddled up to me in bed and suggested celebrating our closeness. As the moment grew more passionate, I realized what she meant, and I shared my knowledge of Allie giving birth to a girl 2 days ago. Our passions flared briefly, and then we made love for an extended period. The next day, I sent flowers to Allie to acknowledge her new motherhood. A day later, I received an overnight letter from Allie expressing her sincere apologies and the desire to reconnect with me. She mentioned her understanding of the lessons I had tried to teach her and the changes she had undergone. She also mentioned her daughter Bonnie and the possibility of us reuniting. I shared the letter with Shannon, who found Allie's words sincere and asked me what I intended to do. I expressed my concern about the impact on my relationship with Shannon and received a warm hug and a loving kiss in response. Shannon emphasized the need to let go of the past so that our relationship could flourish. With Shannon by my side, I knocked on Allie's door, surprising her. We shared affectionate cheek hugs and entered her apartment. I held Bonnie, and she didn't cry, reminding me of how small baby hands and feet are. Shannon brought up Allie's marital status, and Allie explained that Bonnie's father was reluctant to commit. Throughout the evening, Allie and I kept our distance. Before leaving, Shannon urged me to express my love to Allie, and I returned to Allie's apartment to give her a hug and tell her that I still loved her. 6 months and a few weeks later, the traditional Christmas Eve dinner was hosted in my apartment, with Shannon, Allie, and me holding Bonnie. I delivered the Christmas blessing, and we all dined and exchanged gifts. Shannon and I spent the night at her house, marking a change in our relationship. 12 months later, we celebrated Christmas Eve at Shannon's house. Life had moved forward, and I had found contentment in my life's new chapter.
Story 3.
When my wife cheated and intended to divorce me, I ghosted her and proceeded with the divorce first. I'm 35, male, married to my high school sweetheart, Caroline, female, 32. She was my junior and always interested in me. After a while, I fell for her too. We dated all the way through college. Everybody looked at our relationship as some sort of miracle. All of our friends said they had never seen long-distance relationships work, but we did it. Not that it was a piece of cake, but because both of us really wanted our relationship to work. We were so much in love with each other that we were ready to do anything to make it work. After I established my career and she was almost done with her college, I proposed to her. It was pointless to wait any longer, as both of us knew we would not be able to live without each other. We were eager to spend the rest of our lives together. Things changed a lot, though. Things were going well between us, like a normal married couple. There was a honeymoon phase where we could not keep our hands off each other. Both of us made each other the center of our universe. After a few years of marriage, the honeymoon phase faded, of course. However, both of us were still very happy. We lived our days together in love. We made sure to arrange small surprises for each other that kept the romance in our relationship alive. It was not something that was forced, it was effortless and natural. To get into that story, let me tell you about the background of it. I completed my studies in business education. After that, I was ready to handle my dad's business as I was the only son. He did not impose his business on me. I've always had an immense interest in business. I had visited my dad's office very excitedly when I was a child. I loved to watch him deal with people. He worked really hard, and I observed him very deeply. I knew since my childhood that this was what I was meant to do when I grew up. So, when I completed college, I was ready to pursue business very passionately. I was very determined, and I had to work really hard. My dad was always by my side to correct my mistakes and help me out. I did make mistakes in the beginning, as they are crucial for success, but eventually, I began to run the business really well, and I was getting recognized and praised a lot. After our marriage, Caroline stopped working. She worked at a firm, but she quit her job a few months into the marriage. I did not want that for her, as I'm the kind of person who is very supportive of careers. I wanted my wife to do whatever she liked and excel at it. I was very supportive of it and was always there to encourage her. Caroline, however, did not want that. She gave me the reason that she just wanted to stay at home and be a housewife. I asked her the reason for it that made her make this decision. She said that she just wanted a break from work and enjoyed being at home cooking food and doing the things that she loved. I highlighted the fact that such long breaks set your career back and you find it hard when you return. But it was what Caroline really wanted, she said. Therefore, I had to respect my wife's decision and support her in her choice. I earned a handsome amount of money, so it was not like she was contributing to the house. Whatever she earned, it was hers, as it should have been. I always believed that a man has to provide for his family, and I was happy to do so. However, when she made the decision to quit her job, she lied to me. She said that she was just taking a break for a while, but I heard her talking to her mom on a call. She didn't know I had woken up. She told her mom that she had quit her job forever and that she didn't want to work when she had the option of sitting at home and enjoying what her husband earned for her. It really hurt me. I was hurt not because she wanted to not work, but because she had lied to me about the reason for this whole thing. I wondered why she was uncomfortable sharing the truth with me. I would never have judged her or asked her to not quit her job. I loved her and supported and respected all her choices, yet she thought she had to hide it from me. That day, a part of me really broke a little as I realized that my wife did not trust me completely or was not comfortable enough with me even after all these years. I did not confront her at all, as I did not want her to feel like I was eavesdropping on her conversation with her mother. I just pretended like nothing had happened, and we continued living our lives. After that, I became really conscious about my actions and my behavior. I wanted to make sure that I was not giving any impression in some way that she couldn't trust me. I tried my best to give her a safe, secure, and comfortable space around me. I was good to her. As Caroline had quit her job, she really was making an exceptional housewife. She kept herself busy at home. She made a nice dinner for both of us. I loved her cooking and her baking. I loved how she was always trying new dishes and new sorts of cakes, and she was really good at it. But she was also quite invested in home settings and decor. She was always keeping our furniture quite up to trend and making new settings. There is no doubt in admitting that she was exceptional at it. I know people whose wives stay at home, but they neither cook that well nor keep the house good. Caroline had good taste. She was good with colors and settings. She seemed very happy and at peace like that, so I was happy for her. I was glad that she was not stressing about work-related things and was living her life as she had wanted. However, somewhere in my head, I still wondered why she had lied to me. Should I read this to be any red flag? I think her choosing to stay at home should have warranted a serious conversation in which you both discuss where you are at financially and if it's feasible for her to do so and for how long. You have a right to feel how you do. If she can't talk to you about this, what else is she hiding? Update 1. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, I kept trying my best to be good to her. A few months later, a small conflict arose among us when we got to talk about starting a family and having children. It had been 3 years into our marriage and everything was just great. I just felt like I was missing the presence of my children, and so I decided to discuss this with Caroline. Her reaction was not what I expected at all. She really flipped out as if I had demanded something without considering what she thought about it. I stayed calm and made her realize that I was not demanding it from her, of course. I was just trying to discuss it with her as it was something that I wanted and had been thinking about. She got really mad at me and shouted and went into the room, slamming the door behind her. I was completely shocked at the reaction. It was just so abnormal. I was obviously never going to force her to do anything that she did not want. It was her body and it was up to her if she wanted it or not, and I would never force her for something like that. I just found it weird that she was not being reasonable about it at all. How hard was it to talk about it and have a proper conversation instead of barging off and slamming doors behind her? I was mad at her too. After that, I did not know our relationship had become the kind where we could not communicate with each other without her getting mad at me. I decided that this time I would not talk to her or make up for her until she realized her mistake. I was expecting her to come to me after she had cooled down, but that did not happen. I fell asleep in the living room waiting for her to come out of the room and talk it out, but that did not happen either. I woke up in the morning to see that she was in the kitchen making breakfast for us. I went into the kitchen and stood for a few minutes hoping that she would talk, but that did not happen. She pretended as if I was not even present. I wanted to talk to her, but it infuriated me even more, so I also stopped talking to her. I thought if it doesn't matter to her, why should I care either? I went to my office and worked as usual. I was hoping for Caroline to text something, but she did not, and I was disappointed. I went home in the evening as is my daily routine, and I found out that Caroline was not home. It was weird as she never went out at that time of the day or without telling me about it. I found it weird, but I went to the kitchen hoping I might see a note there, but nothing. I checked my phone again for texts or voicemails, but nothing. I called her, but she did not pick up the call. I also realized that she had not prepared anything for lunch or dinner, which was also something that rarely happened. I waited for her to get home, and meanwhile I made dinner for us. By that point, I was not really mad at her, and I thought I would make up and explain to her what I meant yesterday. I made pasta for us as Caroline loved it. After I made the pasta, I checked my phone again to see if there was any update. She still hadn't returned any of my calls or texts. I began to get worried because it was not normal, and I feared that she was in some sort of trouble. I made some phone calls to her friends, but she was not with any of them. I began to get really worried. All sorts of weird scenarios began to circle in my head. I was too scared. I kept calling her, but she wasn't answering. As I was about to leave the house to go to the police or something, Caroline turned up at the door. I almost cried out of joy and hugged her, and then scolded her for where she had been. She acted very casually as if I was overreacting. We sat down and had dinner. She smiled as she realized that I had made pasta for us. She apologized for her behavior, and I also clarified to her that I was just trying to discuss it with her. I was obviously not forcing her to have a baby. I would never do that until both of us were ready to become parents. We made up, and then I told her that I had been worried sick about where she had been when she didn't come home for so long. Caroline said that she had gone to visit her friend Sarah, as Sarah had invited her over. She didn't tell me because she was mad at me. She was unable to pick up my calls because her battery died. After that, we talked a little more, and then I went to sleep. Caroline fell asleep almost immediately, but I could not. The events of the day kept revolving in my head. I could not understand what the uncomfortable feeling was, but I was not feeling all right. Something was just totally off. I felt like Caroline was turning into a stranger. She did some things that were completely out of my understanding. It was not how she usually behaved with me. The way she was so casual about being absent and not informing me felt very wrong. It was not the person I married who was so considerate and loving and never tried to put anyone under unnecessary stress or tension. Also, she had always been very communicative with me. We never hid things from each other. We were very vocal about how we felt, and we always acknowledged and respected each other. It was the secret behind staying in love with each other for so long, through so many different phases of life. And now I felt like that was vanishing. Caroline was backing away from communication and respecting my feelings. It made me wonder if our relationship was falling apart. Seems like she's staying distant so that you don't find out what she's hiding. She's definitely holding you at arm's length. Update 2, sorry for the late update. I know I almost took a year to update, but trust me, I really got caught up in a lot of mess and it took me all this while to clear it up. Here's what happened next. 2 days later, I was at the store buying some things. I was going home and had stopped to get Caroline's favorite chocolate. It was something I was trying to rejuvenate our love. I was paying at the counter when I ran into Sarah. She said hi to me and asked how Caroline was doing. I said she would know if she just met her the previous day. Sarah seemed confused and said that she hadn't met Caroline since last month. I was more confused. I said that I must have misheard then. As I was driving home, I knew I was probably seeing the end of my marriage. I could not tolerate lies from Caroline. Where was she and why on earth did she lie to me? I went home and gave her the chocolates I had bought for her. She was overjoyed. We had a usual conversation and laughed. I was faking it all. My mind was stuck with who Caroline was with the previous day. As Caroline went to sleep that night, I snuck out as I could just not stop myself. I took her phone and opened it. I checked her calls and texts. I was surprised to see that she had called my best friend Simon, 35 millions, very frequently and almost every day. It was very fishy and abnormal. Simon was my childhood friend. He was the son of my dad's best friend. Simon and I had grown up together. We had spent all the stages of life with each other. We went to school and college together, and we took over our father's businesses at the same time. Simon, however, was not as hardworking as I was. He was interested in partying and not doing anything. He never really had an interest in business either, and was actually forced by his father to take over. His father did not give him a choice to do something else. Simon was good friends with Caroline, of course, as she had been with me for so long. I liked the fact that they got along well when we started dating because I had seen people with difficulties when their friends and their partners did not get along well. I always wanted my partner to get along with my best friend, and I was very happy when I got that. During high school and college times, we hung out together and enjoyed a lot. I'm glad that I had the two people who were closest to my heart in all steps of my life, my lover and my best friend. The next day I went to meet Simon. I was just curious. I was obviously not going to ask him about those calls, but I just wanted to see if I caught on to something from meeting him. I went to his office and as usual, he was out. He was running his business very poorly because of his immense carelessness and unprofessional behavior. I called him and he asked me to wait for a few minutes as he was almost there. He met me in the same cheerful greeting manner that he always did. He asked if I would like to eat or drink anything, and I asked him for coffee. We talked about a lot of things, and when I was about to leave, he asked me about Caroline and how she was doing. He remarked that he hadn't talked to her in ages, and he must invite us over for dinner. I smiled and said that we would love that as a reunion. As I got out of his office, I knew Caroline was cheating on me with this guy. I didn't even need to have proof because I knew that already. It was just something that I could see in his ugly eyes. It was right there. But of course, I needed some proof to go about it the right way. I went home and faked the rest of the day with Caroline. When Caroline went to take a shower, I took her phone and installed a tracker on it. That app allowed me to access her phone and see all her texts and calls and every activity on her phone. I was ready to get some filthy evidence and divorce her. The next morning, the first thing I did was call my lawyer. I discussed the matter with him in detail. I told him that I did not want to share anything with her after the divorce. She did not deserve a single penny. The lawyer said that if the evidence was solid enough, it was possible that she would not get money out of the divorce. I was going to make sure that was going to happen. I kept a check on Caroline's phone, and yes, I got the proof almost immediately. There was an exchange of texts between Caroline and Simon. Their conversation was disgusting. It made me sick to the core. Caroline was saying that she would file for divorce in a few weeks, and that whatever she would get out of the divorce she would share with Simon and they would get married soon. Apparently, she was actually in love with Simon, and that was more painful for me. I took the screenshots and was relieved that I had gotten the much-needed evidence to solidify my case. I then texted them to my lawyer, and he said that things were looking really great for me. He immediately filed for a divorce and filed a case against Caroline, too. I didn't go home that day. I decided that I was only going to see her in court. I was not going to talk to her or even let her say a single word to me. I could not tolerate her filthy existence around me. I took an apartment on rent as I knew that it would take me a while before the case ended and I could not be around her. She was sent the divorce notice and I'm sure she was really shocked. She sent me billions of texts asking what it was and where I was, but I was not going to answer. She was going to be ruined in so many ways. The court process began and I had to go to court regarding it. Everything was in my favor as I had proof for everything. The proceedings carried on for a few months, but they ended in my favor. During those months, she kept trying to reconcile and apologize, but I pretended like she did not exist and I did not even allow myself to feel the pain that I was going through. Caroline got almost nothing out of the divorce because her intentions were crystal clear to everyone. She had no savings as she hadn't worked a day since our marriage. She had been with me for my money and had been cheating on me with my best friend. My best friend was after my money and success too, and he wanted to get it through my wife. I never talked to Simon again. He never came to me either. He must have known that I would punch him in the face if he ever talked to me again. Simon did not marry Caroline as expected. He only wanted to get the money out of her, but that never happened. When Simon's father got to know about his reality through my dad, he despised him. He was already very ashamed of his loser son because he was depreciating his dad's business every day while I was able to scale my dad's to the next level. The trauma of being betrayed by your wife and your best friend is not easy. I had lost two of the closest people to me who had been with me for so long. Life began to look very hard and ugly, and I was depressed. Thankfully, my parents were there for me in all of this. They stood by me at all times. My mom convinced me to take therapy and deal with things in the right way. I never wanted to take therapy, but I did it, and I was glad that my mom had forced me to take this step. It enabled me to heal and handle my grief in a better way. I didn't have to stay in the heap of hopelessness and depression. I met Simon a few months later, and I was very depressed in those days. I could not stop myself from lashing out at him. I almost punched him, but I was stopped by the people in the office. Later, I found out that Simon's business was going to be lost. He had lost a lot and had gone through a lot of problems only because of his carelessness and incapability. I threw myself into the business once again, as it made me forget everything that had gone wrong in my life. I got better as time makes you forget a lot of things. I had moved on from the extreme pain that was thrown at me. I am proud of who I am and where I stand today despite going through so much in life. The fact that I'm able to write down about my pain so effortlessly indicates that I have moved on. I'm so sorry your ex did this to you, Opie. I can't imagine how hard it would have been to learn that your wife and your best friend were messing around on you behind your back. I'm sorry she threw it all away. You were so supportive of her and the choice she made in quitting her job to become a housewife. It is funny, though, that after all of that she was quite literally left with nothing. She only did that to herself. We're proud of you, OP. What do you make of Ope's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.
Story 4.
Shannon and I met in college our sophomore year and instantly clicked. She was stunning with her thick brown hair, blue eyes, and a fit body. But what really captivated me was her vibrant personality, smart, cheerful, and funny. We became best friends, and after 3 months, we shared a memorable moment in my car behind the baseball stadium. It was clumsy, yet beautiful, and when we finally connected, she cried tears of happiness. From then on, I knew we were meant to be together. I'm Stu, a contractor from a small Midwestern town. I stand at 6 feet tall, weigh 187 pounds, with brown eyes and sandy hair. I run a successful remodeling business while Shannon teaches music at a local high school. Together, we're financially stable and planning to start a family soon. Our first decade of marriage was blissful. Our bed life was fulfilling, though not daily. We had a rule to cuddle every night, and waking up next to Shannon was always a joy. I'd give anything for her without hesitation. But then, something unexpected happened, leaving me emotionally shaken. Most of our work happens in the warmer months, so we vacationed during holidays and took trips in the summer. Shannon occasionally visited family or kept up with teaching during my busy season. Our favorite winter escape was to somewhere warm. During our marriage crisis, we opted for a 2-week stay at an all-inclusive spa resort in the Bahamas, hoping to reconnect. But my perception shattered quickly. Before boarding the plane, I believed our marriage was flawless. However, a man's lingering stares at Shannon at the airport hinted otherwise. His familiarity with her raised red flags, though they didn't attempt further contact. Despite my unease, Shannon seemed oblivious. On the plane, the man ended up seated several rows ahead. Shannon's decision to take an aisle seat instead of her usual preference for the window added to my suspicions. When I questioned her, she blamed it on a stomach issue. I managed to switch seats for her with a fellow passenger, citing her discomfort, but my gut churned with doubt. Normally, I sleep fine on planes, but my anxiety kept me awake during the flight from Minneapolis to Miami. Despite pretending to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Shannon and I stowed our belongings, and once airborne, I feigned sleep, keeping an eye on her. After 15 minutes, she glanced at me, thinking I was asleep. Convinced I was unaware, Shannon got up and went to the restroom. I observed her interactions, noting her brief touch on a man's shoulder, confirming my suspicions. When they met in the aisle, their body language spoke volumes. His hand on her waist, her smile, clear signs of familiarity and closeness. Realizing the danger to my marriage, I felt a wave of sadness. How could she betray us like this? Throughout the flight, I struggled to comprehend the situation, hoping it would somehow resolve. But as we boarded our flight to Nassau, my fears were confirmed when I spotted him 5 rows behind us, engrossed in his book. During the flight, Shannon resumed her usual seat by the window, signaling a return to normalcy. Arriving in Nassau, we collected our bags, rented a car, and headed to the hotel. While I drove, Shannon was engrossed in her phone, leaving me to grapple with my emotions. "Who are you texting?" "Just my mom and sis, letting them know we arrived." I'd rather see for myself. Isn't it funny how suspicions grow like snowballs? Our room was stunning, overlooking the ocean and a pool. As we unpacked, I knew I had to make a move to win back my wife. I approached Shannon, hugged her, and kissed her neck. "You know how much I love you?" Shannon turned to me, kissed my lips lightly, saying, "I love you too, baby," but her eyes seemed distant. "I'd never hurt you, Shannon, or our marriage." She shuddered. "I know, Stu," she whispered, avoiding my gaze. I sensed I was losing the battle. If she hadn't strayed yet, she would soon. I released her and rushed to the bathroom, trying to gather my thoughts. How did this happen? What did I miss? Can I save us? Or is it too late? I splashed my face and returned to find Shannon with a strange look. "Stu, I got my period and forgot tampons." "What?" "It just started, but this isn't normal." "Maybe it's the excitement of the trip. I'll get some." She left, closing the door. At first, I thought it might slow her affair, but then doubt crept in. This never happened before. Was she lying to avoid closeness? It seemed so, and it tore me apart. If that's true, she's not the woman I married. No one could be so treacherous and cruel, letting me plan and pay for this trip just to betray me. I felt lost, like I was losing my mind. Who was this woman I loved for over 10 years? Spotting her phone by the TV, I turned it on, finding no password change. I checked her messages with Anthony Eisner, starting in the car. Anthony: "Hey, hot. Can't wait to have you." Shannon: "You almost got us caught." Anthony: "I almost kissed you on the plane." Shannon: "Stu was asleep. I liked your squeeze." Anthony: "I'm in the lobby. Is Stu acting weird?" Their conversation continued in the hotel room. Anthony: "When will you leave Stu?" Shannon: "Stu's a good husband." Anthony: "But I'm better in bed." Shannon: "Stu's good, but I need more. Let's make a baby." Anthony: "I'll make you wet." Shannon: "Stu won't touch me. I'll lie about my period." Anthony: "He's so stupid." Shannon: "Don't call him that." Anthony: "Meet me in the lobby." Shannon: "Give me 5. I stood in shock, considering using the texts in a divorce. But then, I decided against it. My phone held all my personal data. She started this mess, so I let her deal with it. I kept both phones, knowing she'd notice hers missing soon, but I'd be gone by then. Bile rose in my throat, and I vomited. I glanced at the beautiful Caribbean Sea, once the source of my happiness just 8 hours ago. Preparing for a romantic 2 weeks, my world collapsed. Alone, shocked, and angry, I wanted revenge on them both. Divorce was certain, but I craved more. Peering out the window, I saw them kissing by the pool. I grabbed my camera and recorded their actions, planning to use it later. They must have a plan to keep me occupied while they were together. It hit me. They intended to spend 2 weeks together, so why not beat them to it? I needed to know how they planned to keep me busy. I continued filming until they kissed once more, and Shannon walked away. I returned to the bathroom, turning on the shower to calm down. If she asked, I'd say it helped me relax after the flight and rid myself of the airplane smell. 5 minutes later, I heard the door open and close. "I'm back," she shouted. "I brought water and tampons." "Great, I'll be out soon." Why bring water? The resort provides it. Then it hit me. She plans to medicate me. I pondered my options. If I refuse, she'll suspect. If I drink and she's poisoned, she and her lover will leave. What to do? I dried off, contemplating. She knocked, concerned about my time. Was it for me or her date? Anger surged, but I composed myself. She handed me a bottle, already opened. "Stay hydrated," she said, avoiding eye contact. Pretending to drink, I discreetly emptied and refilled it in the bathroom. Back in the room, she unpacked, unaware of my ruse. Noticing a hot dress, I questioned its purpose. She smiled, claiming she brought it. "Aren't you tired?" I hinted at her deceit. Pretending to drink, I feigned drowsiness, my heart racing. "Yeah, I'm a bit tired," I said lazily. "What time for dinner?" "Seating's in a couple of hours. Rest, I'll wake you," she said sincerely. "Okay, won't sleep long. Want time with you," I said, trying to mask her reaction. "Love you," she replied, less convincingly. I pretended to drift off, hearing her call someone, pleased I'd fooled her. "I'll be at Sandpiper Bar in an hour," she said, giggling. "Can't wait, love, bye." She hung up, preparing for her night out. Anger simmered as I feigned sleep, watching her. As soon as she showered, I searched her purse, finding unlabeled pills. I pocketed some, returned to bed, and waited for her to leave. Once alone, I dressed quickly, formulating a plan. First on my agenda was to gather more substantial video evidence of their affair. Secondly, I was determined to throw a wrench into their plans for the remainder of the trip. Though I hadn't yet formulated a clear strategy, I was resolved that both of them would face consequences for their deceit. Thirdly, I decided it was time to cut the trip short and initiate divorce proceedings as soon as possible. I couldn't afford to wait and allow Shannon the opportunity to sabotage our finances or make other moves against me. After hastily dressing, I grabbed my camera and hurried out of the room. As I made my way to the bar, I pondered the capabilities of the camera, hoping it would perform well in the dimly lit environment. Upon arriving, I strategically positioned myself behind some palm trees, ensuring a clear view of the bar while remaining concealed from their sight. Observing them from a distance, my heart burned with a mixture of rage and betrayal as I watched Shannon, adorned in that provocative red dress I once adored, wrapped in the arms of another man. It took every ounce of self-restraint I possessed not to storm over and confront him then and there. but I reminded myself that my primary objective was to gather evidence, not to risk a scene that could land me in trouble. With steady hands, I captured their every interaction, each kiss and caress, each shared laugh, all the while feeling a deep sense of anguish at the sight of my wife behaving so carnally with another man. As the hours passed, my resolve wavered, and I contemplated retreating to our room, now mine alone. However, just as I was about to leave, I noticed them departing the dance floor with a sense of urgency. Curiosity piqued, I discreetly followed them, maintaining a safe distance to avoid detection. Along the way, they paused intermittently to steal affectionate moments, and I diligently recorded their every move. Eventually, they arrived at his modest room, situated away from the ocean view, a stark contrast to the luxury we had enjoyed together. Peering through the partially drawn curtains, I strained to catch snippets of their conversation, my camera capturing every word exchanged between them. Despite the pain gnawing at my heart, I remained steadfast, knowing that the evidence I gathered would be crucial in the days to come. As they was undressed, I couldn't help but notice his impressive size, though it was no excuse for her betrayal or for allowing him to father a child. I lingered outside, recording their passionate encounter, which seemed endless. Not only was he well endowed, but he also displayed remarkable stamina. Approaching midnight, I anticipated her departure, only to overhear their unsettling conversation. Concerned about the pills she'd given me, she worriedly asked about their safety. He assured her I'd sleep for hours without damage, proposing a dosage plan to prolong our separation. Their callous laughter fueled my fury. Having heard and seen more than enough, I retreated to my room, consumed by a desire for revenge. Determined to disrupt their nightly rendezvous, I crafted a plan. I'd orchestrate a diversion to lure her away, affording me the opportunity to confront him alone. But how to keep them apart? A spa day seemed the perfect solution. I'd gift Shannon a package, masking my true intentions with false affection. It was a deceitful move, but one I deemed necessary to exact the justice they deserved. If she hesitates, I'll insist the spa package is non-refundable, evoking guilt to ensure she accepts, just as she's pressured me in the past. With her occupied for hours, I'll deal with my lover's misdeeds. After changing into shorts, I lay awake plotting my revenge, fixated on confronting him. Around 5 a.m, Shannon returned, quietly slipping into bed beside me. Suppressing my urge to push her away, I feigned sleep, awaiting the opportune moment to act. By 7, as she slumbered, I roused myself, taking a quick shower before setting out to find the spa. Hoping for an early opening, I sought a package to keep her occupied while I attended to matters. Upon arrival, I quickly selected a 3-hour session, prioritizing its duration over its contents. Booking the earliest slot, I planned to surprise Shannon. Satisfied, I left to explore, recognizing she likely needed rest after her night with her lover. Returning to the room around 9 a.m, I found Shannon still asleep. Quietly, I searched through her purse and discovered her phone. Scrolling through her messages, I came across one from Anthony sent within the last hour. "You were great last night. Any chance you could escape Stu for some afternoon fun?" Despite my rising anger, I managed to keep it in check, but I knew the end was drawing near. As Shannon began to stir, I replaced her phone and leaned in to kiss her forehead gently. "Good morning, sleepyhead," I greeted softly. "I'm sorry about yesterday for falling asleep so suddenly and ruining our dinner plans, but I have a surprise for you." A hint of uncertainty flickered in Shannon's eyes as she smiled and yawned. "What kind of surprise?" she asked. "I booked you a spa day as an apology for last night and to show you how much I love you." Even in my drowsy state, I noticed her slight shudder. It dawned on me that she harbored doubts about our relationship. "Everything is fine, isn't it?" I probed gently. "Or don't you like my gift?" Shannon's response was a hesitant nod and a faint smile. "Oh no, I like it," she reassured me, though her smile faltered slightly. "I just wish you had asked me first." "If I had done that, it wouldn't have come as much of a surprise to you," I reasoned, hoping to dispel any lingering doubts. "Look, this doesn't mean you need to run to the spa right now. I've made a reservation for O2 Wowan today so we can spend some time together." Shannon nodded in agreement, expressing her gratitude for my thoughtfulness. After she got up and headed to the bathroom, I glanced out the window and noticed Anthony by the pool, engaged in conversation with two young women. Although I suspected Shannon had informed him about my surprise, he didn't appear perturbed. As I observed their interaction, it struck me that Anthony might have contingency plans in case Shannon couldn't join him for some afternoon fun. About an hour later, Shannon and I were at the buffet, filling our plates. While I loaded mine with breakfast items, Shannon opted for just fruit and coffee. "Feeling hungry, babe? Is it because of your period?" I inquired. Yeah, that might be it. I really don't have much of an appetite," she replied, visibly distracted. Her reaction to Anthony's message piqued my curiosity, but ultimately, it didn't matter much as my plan seemed to be working, especially on her. After breakfast, we opted for a stroll along the beach. I brought my camera along, capturing shots of the palm trees and Shannon. Despite my compliments, she seemed uneasy, hinting at a growing sense of guilt. "What's wrong, babe? Are you okay?" I probed, sensing her discomfort. "No, I'm fine. Just a bit tired," she responded, her guilt becoming more evident. "Would you mind if I went back to our room for a nap before my spa visit?" she asked. "Sure, no problem." "I understand it's not ideal to have your period start during vacation," I reassured her, concealing my growing frustration. As she walked away without so much as a goodbye kiss, I resolved to confront Anthony soon. As I continued walking along the beach, lost in thought, I encountered two couples, one of which included the women who had spoken with Anthony earlier. They were now accompanied by two burly men who appeared formidable. Overhearing their conversation, it was evident that Anthony had convinced them to go deep-sea fishing, leaving the women feeling neglected. Despite their attempts to reassure them, it was clear the women felt left out and unappreciated. As they passed by me, it was apparent that Anthony had won the argument, leaving the women feeling unsatisfied. After strolling along the beach for a bit, I decided to head back and check on how her boyfriend was doing. I was worried Shannon might have ditched her spa appointment to be with him, but if that was the case, maybe I could snag more footage of them together. I roamed the hotel grounds for over an hour until I found myself outside Anthony's room. I heard voices inside, but not Shannon's. Carefully, I readied my camera and crept closer to the window. It was risky since it was daytime and more people could spot me. So, I figured the best move was to mount the camera outside on a windowsill, pointing into the room and let it roll. After setting it up, I found a spot to watch his door and see who emerged. Time dragged on, but my patience paid off. The two gals I spotted with Anthony earlier by the pool and then at the beach with those dudes came out of his room, all smiles and giggles, like they shared some juicy secret. It was a riot. Once they were gone, I retrieved my camera and headed back to my room. Shannon wouldn't be back from her spa session for nearly another hour, so I had time to review my notes. Back in my room, I fired up my laptop and transferred all the videos I'd taken since we arrived. Most were of Shannon and the idiot. But then I watched the footage of those girls in his room. Turns out, they found a way to kill time while their pals were off deep-sea fishing. Anthony convinced them to join him in a ménage à trois. It was like a low-budget adult flick. He had his way with one while the other watched and played solo. Then they switched, and the cycle continued. That's when another idea struck me. I could time it just right to bail out while Shannon was here, trying to piece together what went down. I figured she'd likely try to medicate me tonight to make me look like a fool again, and if I played my cards right, she'd end up meeting Anthony at the bar, dancing and boozing before heading back to his room. If I could slip a pill into their drinks towards the end of the night, they'd be out cold by the time they hit his room. Timing had to be flawless, but in life, plans hardly ever go off without a hitch. The next step in the plan involved making a DVR copy of Anthony's recent conquests. I must admit, I was somewhat amazed by this guy's ability to charm two very attractive women into his room. With multiple DVR discs on hand, I duplicated his escapades from the day. Now, I just needed to figure out where to discreetly leave them. Additionally, I duplicated all my previous recordings onto another DVR for added insurance. Heading to the front desk, I arranged for one disc to be sent to my brother Frank's home with a note urging him not to play it or reveal its origin, just in case my plan flopped or if Shannon and Anthony caught wind of my scheme and wanted to retaliate. If they tried anything, at least the disc I sent to my brother would expose the culprits. Glancing at the time, I noticed Shannon was nearing the end of her spa treatment. Deciding to quickly scope out the hotel, I aimed to locate the rooms of the two women and their boyfriends. Surely their partners would be curious about their activities while they were out deep-sea fishing. Soon, I spotted the women emerging from the pool with towels and followed them to discover they were heading back to their rooms, which conveniently happened to be adjacent to each other. This resolved one aspect of my plan. If all went according to schedule, and Shannon and Anthony repeated last night's routine, by tomorrow morning, I could thoroughly disrupt the remainder of their trip. Returning to my room, I called the airline to inquire about the earliest flight. Unfortunately, the earliest available was at 10 a.m., later than I had hoped, but I booked it nonetheless. Then, I informed the front desk that my wife and I had to depart the following morning due to a sudden emergency at home, checking out at 8 a.m. They expressed sympathy and wished me well, and I thanked them before heading back to the room. Now, I was fully committed to my plan. No matter what obstacles arose, if things didn't unfold as I envisioned, I'd still catch a plane in the morning and beat Shannon home. At least I could spoil everything for her before her arrival. But if by some miracle, everything fell into place according to my scheme, she'd be stranded here for days, maybe weeks, allowing me ample time to wreak havoc in her life. The plan was straightforward. First, I'd let Shannon believe she had medicated me, feigning sleep so she and Anthony could enjoy their evening together. Second, I'd return to the bar, observing and biding my time to spike their drinks with whatever substance Shannon had attempted on me. If I timed it perfectly, they'd pass out just before reaching his room or immediately upon arrival. Timing was crucial. Third, once they were in the room, I'd intervene, escort Shannon back to our room, and then return to thoroughly strip Anthony of his belongings. I'd nab his wallet, cash, passport, credit cards, clothes, everything he brought. Then, I'd locate the rooms of the two women Anthony had engaged with previously and discreetly slip the DVR drives under their doors, hoping one of their boyfriends would discover them first and view the footage. I was certain they wouldn't be pleased with their girlfriend's activities in their absence. Anthony's license plate was clearly visible on the video, ensuring they'd have no trouble tracking him down. Fifth, I'd treat Shannon the same way I did Anthony. I'd strip her of all her belongings except clothes and a purse, leaving a note in her empty wallet to assign blame. With everything set, all I could do now was wait for the players to make their moves. Shannon returned to her room at 5:30 in the evening, looking more serene and radiant than ever. It pained me to consider how she had ended our marriage, knowing I'd never have her beauty by my side again. "Stu, thank you so much for the spa day. It was incredible. I feel like a whole new person," she exclaimed, glowing with satisfaction. "I'm thrilled you enjoyed it. Initially, you didn't seem too keen when I suggested it, but now I'm glad you did. I just wanted to show you how much you mean to me," I replied, noticing her wince and the glint of tears in her eyes. "Thanks again. I really enjoyed it, and I love you," she said this time with more conviction and emotion. "Anytime, baby. We've got dinner reservations for 7. How about we rest up and then get ready?" I suggested. She nodded and headed to the bathroom, taking her purse along. A few minutes later, she emerged with 2 bottles of water, handing one to me. "Here, drink up. I want to go dancing tonight, so you better start hydrating now," she said with a wink. All right, let me hit the bathroom first," I chuckled. Once inside, I went through the familiar routine, emptying the bottle and refilling it with water from the counter. I flushed the toilet to make it sound like I was occupied before returning to the bedroom. Continuing to sip water, after 15 minutes, I began to feign sleep, snoring lightly as I watched Shannon prepare for her evening with Anthony. Unbeknownst to her, she headed to the bathroom and started the shower. Seizing the opportunity, I swiftly retrieved her phone to check her messages from her lover. "I can't leave this afternoon. Stu got me a spa package. I couldn't refuse, Anthony," she had texted. "No problem, baby. I've got other plans. Are we still on for tonight?" Anthony responded eagerly. "Oh yeah, I can't wait to be with you, Anthony," Shannon replied, igniting my anger. Reading through their exchange, my fury subsided slightly, knowing the end was near. Now all I had to do was tail them to a bar, observe their dance routine for a few hours, and then easily spike their drinks. Or so I hoped. I searched through Shannon's purse and found Anthony's room key card, pocketing it before neatly arranging everything back. Shannon took a bit longer to get ready. Then she did something entirely unexpected. She sat beside me on the bed and gently caressed my cheek. "Baby, after this week, I'll be all yours. I promise. I just needed to clear my head before we start a family. I'm sorry I couldn't confide in you, but I had to do this. The next few days are for me. I couldn't risk telling you, knowing you'd leave me. But I need you more than ever. I love you deeply, but I have to do this, she confessed. Then she leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, I love you so much, Stu. Initially, I thought she had realized I was awake, but then I realized she was trying to ease her own guilt. However, it was too late for that. Soon, she was fully dressed and walked out the door. As soon as the door closed, I sprang out of bed, got dressed, and followed closely behind her. They found themselves once again in the same bar as the night before. It was busier than last night, and I even spotted 2 women and their boyfriends from the beach. If my plan succeeded, they wouldn't be together. The next morning, I found myself in the same spot as the previous evening. I settled in and began recording the evening's events with my trusty camera. The night unfolded as expected, and soon both were seated at the table, chatting and laughing. As the hour grew late, I realized it was time to medicate them with sleeping pills. I quickly made my way to the bar, ensuring they didn't notice me. Finding an empty seat near where the waitresses prepared drinks, I ordered a beer, keeping a watchful eye on them. Observing closely, I noticed a waitress taking their order and promptly relaying it to the bartender. I seized the opportunity as she placed her order, calling over another bartender to order the same drinks. As the first bartender turned away to fulfill the order, I discreetly opened a capsule and poured its contents into each drink, stirring to dissolve the powder. It fizzled slightly but blended seamlessly. With a glass in each hand, I maneuvered past the waitress, ensuring to shield the exchange from view. Thankfully, the crowded bar provided ample cover, and my actions went unnoticed. I distanced myself from the waitress, giving her the chance to deliver the drinks to the happy couple. Swiftly, I left the bar and returned to my observation spot, anxiously watching. The waitress served them their drinks, and I waited, hoping my timing was right. It was just past 1 in the morning, so if the medication worked as planned, they'd remain unconscious until around 11 in the morning. It'd be ideal if they made it to Anthony's room before passing out. They leisurely sipped their drinks, and I grew increasingly nervous. What if they didn't finish? Would there be enough medicates for the desired effect? Then, Anthony leaned in and whispered something to Shannon. She smiled, and they hastily downed the remaining drinks before leaving the bar. Thank goodness. I hurried to keep pace with them, noticing their haste to return to the room. As I trailed behind, I observed Shannon beginning to stumble, struggling to maintain her balance. Anthony took her hand, draping it over his neck and supporting her with his arm around her waist. By the time they reached his room, Anthony too appeared increasingly unsteady. My timing of medicating their drinks was spot on. Now, I just had to wait for the full effect. Upon reaching his door, Shannon could barely stand, and Anthony was staggering more with each step. He fumbled with the keycard, making several unsuccessful attempts before managing to open the door and stumbling inside. After waiting a few minutes, I retrieved the keycard from Shannon's purse and entered the room. As I stepped inside, I heard Anthony muttering, "What's wrong with you, baby? You didn't drink that much." His slurred speech indicated he'd soon be unconscious. Inside, Shannon lay face down on the bed, already in a deep sleep. Anthony shook her, attempting to rouse her. "Come on, baby, it's time to have some fun," he mumbled, then noticed my presence. "Hey, who are you?" he slurred, trying to stand up straight but nearly falling. "Just her husband, the fool. Now, be a good boy and pass out so I can get her out of here," I retorted. On cue, he slowly collapsed to the floor, motionless. Approaching the bed, I noticed his phone lying nearby. I picked it up, curious about its contents in terms of texts and photos. Soon enough, I was scrolling through numerous photos, most innocuous, but then I stumbled upon something more damning. He possessed a folder containing numerous images of women in different stages of undress, some engaging in lovemaking acts like self-pleasure. Most of the women were unfamiliar to me, but I did come across a few undressed pictures of Shannon, along with images of her engaging in similar acts. As I continued browsing, I recognized some of the women as teachers from Shannon's school, and the wives of several male colleagues. Well, this is quite revealing. It appears Anthony has a penchant for affairs with married women. Things were about to take a nasty turn. I scrolled through his contact list and decided that, aside from my soon-to-be ex-wife, these photos should be shared with everyone in his contacts, particularly the husbands of the women he photographed. When he returns home, he's in for an unpleasant surprise. I forwarded photos and videos of Shannon to her phone, then transferred them to mine for future use. let's call it insurance. After powering down his phone, I gathered all his belongings, including clothes, toiletries, and other items he brought on the trip, and nonchalantly packed them into his suitcase. I also rifled through his pockets, confiscating his cash, wallet, credit cards, driver's license, and passport, knowing that without a passport, leaving the island would be tricky for him. Once his suitcase was filled, I turned to Shannon, still lying face down on the bed with one leg hanging off. With care, I rolled her onto her back, then carried her to our room. After laying her on our bed, I returned to Anthony's room to collect his remaining belongings, keeping his phone, wallet, and cash as compensation for the trouble he caused. After thoroughly inspecting his room, I wanted to ensure he left with nothing. I even removed his shoes, and on my way back, stumbled upon a hotel dumpster. I tossed his suitcase and shoes inside, covering them with trash to conceal them. Returning to my room, I proceeded to pack my suitcase along with Shannon's belongings, treating her possessions with the same care as Anthony's. I intended to leave her with nothing but the clothes on her back, her purse, necessary items like tampons, and her empty wallet, containing only the note I left behind. Finishing up, I noticed it was already past 4 in the morning, and I needed to be at the airport by 9. Since Shannon finished her drink around 2, she wouldn't wake until at least noon. I anticipated Anthony's arrival around 10:00 in the morning, ensuring I'd be long gone before either of them woke. There was one more task on my agenda. Leaving the room, I grabbed the 2 DVR discs I had recorded earlier and made my way to the rooms where the 2 women and their partners were staying. Stealthily and swiftly, I slipped a disc under each door before returning to my room. There, I gazed at Shannon sleeping peacefully on the bed, overwhelmed by a sense of loss and sadness. I had yearned to start a family with her, but she had other plans, and forgiveness eluded me. After ensuring everything was packed, I seized Shannon's suitcase and retraced my steps to the dumpster, where I deposited her belongings alongside Anthony's. Back in the room, I meticulously searched Shannon's purse, confirming it was empty of money, credit cards, or a passport. I aimed to make her return home as challenging as Anthony's. Collapsing into one of the chairs in the room, exhaustion washed over me, but my mind raced with thoughts of my next steps upon returning home. First, I'll drain our bank and debit accounts, then cancel all our credit cards. Next, I'll gather all my belongings and vacate our house. I figured I'd need to rent a storage unit for my things, but I didn't care. I just wanted out of our house and this sham marriage. Before I knew it, I drifted off to sleep, and upon waking, it was nearly 7 in the morning. Rising from the chair where I'd slept, I approached the bed, casting one last sorrowful glance at Shannon before carefully lifting her and carrying her out of the room. Down at the pool, I settled Shannon onto a lounge chair. Since I was checking out, I didn't want her in the room when housekeeping arrived to clean and prepare it for the next guests. Returning to my room, I grabbed my suitcases and double-checked to ensure I had everything. I still had Anthony's phone, but then I had an idea. Returning to the pool, I retrieved Shannon's phone and began sending the photos and videos to everyone on her contact list. I made exceptions for her young nieces and nephews, but I was sure her parents, siblings, and colleagues would find them enlightening. At the front desk, I requested a piece of tape, which I used to cover the contacts on Shannon's phone battery, making it appear dead. I also made sure she didn't have a phone charging cord. Without money, it would take her a while to get the phone working. Just after 8 in the morning, I heard commotion and shouting. It was one of the boyfriends of the women Anthony had been with yesterday. Apparently, they were now soon-to-be ex-boyfriends. Watch the video I slipped under their door. "You're a moron! Tell your family the wedding's off, and I never want to see you again. Find your own way home, you cow," one guy yelled at his girlfriend. The other guy had a cold expression as his girlfriend pleaded with him. "Baby, please don't leave me," she begged. "I'm so sorry. It was a stupid mistake, and you've already paid him back in full." "You're a traitor. Go to your new boyfriend. He might have more money, but I doubt he'll be as forgiving," he replied coldly, sending shivers down my spine. I wondered what fate befell poor Anthony. Well, I suppose I'll never know. The next thing I heard was the ambulance siren halting in front of the building. The individual I assumed was the manager emerged from his office and swiftly escorted the orderlies down the path to Anthony's room. I sincerely hoped he was all right. As onlookers began to gather to investigate the commotion, I quietly hailed a taxi and headed to the airport. Upon switching on my phone, I noticed a voicemail. I accessed my voicemail and listened to a message from my brother Frank. "Stu, what's going on there? I've received a flood of undressed photos and detailed videos of Shannon. I mean, I know she's attractive, but what's the deal? Fill me in when you get this." Arriving at the airport and waiting to board the plane, I returned his call and briefed him on the entire situation. How Shannon had been involved with Anthony while we were away, and her attempts to conceive with him. Initially shocked, my brother thought I was jesting. However, after urging him to review the video closely, he expressed his sympathies and offered assistance if needed. After thanking him, I ended the call and soon found myself journeying home solo. Upon landing, I powered up Anthony's phone and found numerous voicemails and messages, many containing threats directed at him. It seemed the photos and videos I distributed weren't well received. Retrieving my luggage, I retrieved my car from long-term parking and drove home, brainstorming my next steps along the way. Although divorce was an option, I knew it would entail splitting our assets evenly, which didn't sit right with me given Shannon's infidelity. It felt unjust that she could cheat and still benefit from a divorce. As I drove, another plan began to take shape in my mind, prompting me to mentally outline what I required and how to execute it. She had shattered our marriage, so I was determined to make her life miserable. Upon arriving home, I contacted my brother to assist me in moving my belongings out of the house in the coming days, ensuring Shannon returned to an empty home. Finally, I checked my phone to discover over 20 voicemails and a dozen messages, mostly from Shannon's sister and other relatives, inquiring about her whereabouts and why she wasn't responding. I felt somewhat relieved that there were no messages from Shannon herself. She couldn't turn on her phone, so she probably hadn't realized what had happened yet. I chuckled at the notion that when she eventually powered on her phone, she'd be greeted by a flood of texts and voicemails inquiring about the photos and videos she unwittingly sent. She was in for quite a rude awakening. My first task was to cancel all our credit cards and transfer our money from our joint bank account to my personal one. Then I began gathering my clothes and personal items I wanted to keep. Any gifts Shannon had given me over the years were promptly discarded unless they held significant value, in which case I either sold them online or pawned them. Upon arriving home, I promptly switched off the home phone, directing all communication to my cell phone. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally checked my cell phone and found numerous texts and voicemails from Shannon. She seemed to have gotten her phone working again. Her initial messages inquired about my whereabouts and expressed concern, but as she realized the situation, her tone shifted. "Why? Why did you do this to me? Couldn't we talk first?" she pleaded in subsequent messages. Deciding it would only upset her further, I ignored the rest of her messages. The following day was busy. Unsure when Shannon would return home, I had to act swiftly. I purchased boxes to pack our remaining belongings and rented a warehouse large enough to store everything. Next, I visited the bank to deplete our joint account, transferring the remaining funds to my business account, which I planned to close and abscond with the money. But before I could depart for good, there was one more task to undertake. Our small starter home, initially intended to accommodate our growing family, would now serve a different purpose. Armed with my knowledge of construction and renovation, I embarked on a mission to make extreme alterations to our home, albeit in a non-traditional manner. Gathering supplies across the city, I prepared to give Shannon a visit she'd never forget. Later that morning, my brother Frank arrived with his pickup truck. After discussing my situation, we began loading my belongings onto his truck. It took over 5 hours and 3 trips to the warehouse, but by day's end, I had officially relocated. I kept my plans for the house and Shannon's surprise to myself, knowing Frank would try to dissuade me if he knew. He inquired about my near future plans. "Just leaving town and this awful marriage behind. I won't file for divorce. When she returns, I'll be gone. She may keep the house, but that's all she'll get from me." Frank shook his head. "You know this won't work. She'll hire a lawyer and track you down. Let's get a divorce and move on. Escaping will only make things worse when she finds you. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. Consider it. Get a lawyer and give her half." "No. She cheated and tried to have another man's baby, passing it off as mine. She deserves nothing, and that's exactly what she'll receive. I won't divorce her. I'll leave her broke and exposed for all to see." Frank understood that trying to persuade me was futile. I have a tendency to be obstinate, and once I've made up my mind, it's difficult to sway me." He departed, cautioning me to reflect on my decisions and avoid impulsive actions. Since witnessing Shannon kissing her lover, I've been contemplating everything. Now, it's time to set my plan in motion. That evening, I commenced working on the house and continued until the early hours. Uncertain of Shannon's return, I needed to act swiftly. The impending snowstorm worked in my favor. It was projected to shut down major airports, extending my window to complete the remodeling project. The heavy snowfall, adding an additional 20 to 30 inches atop the existing accumulation, facilitated my plan. Ignoring most of Shannon's calls over the past 2 days, I eventually decided to answer, solely for gathering information. "Please, baby, listen. It was a mistake. A huge, foolish mistake on my part. I never intended for it to escalate like this. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please forgive me," she pleaded tearfully. Her tears failed to sway me. I wanted nothing more to do with her. However, I needed to maintain composure, offering her a glimmer of hope before abruptly cutting it off. "Shannon, you've hurt me more than anyone ever has. I'm not sure if I can forgive you or trust you again. I just need to understand why. Why did you do this to us? Didn't you love me? Wasn't I enough for you?" I maintained a calm tone, though a hint of sadness lingered in my voice. Inside, I wanted to shout into the phone that she was nothing more than a heartless person I never wanted to see again. I should have let her believe we had a chance to reconcile. "Baby, please let me explain. None of that meant anything. He meant nothing to me. You mean everything to me. You're my life. You're everything. Please, oh God, please forgive me," she sobbed. After a brief pause, I responded, "Baby, I'm just not sure. I loved you, but you've broken my heart. I don't know if we can mend everything." "No, baby, we'll mend everything. Our love will be even stronger, our connection deeper. We just have to get through this. Please, baby, can you wait until I come home so we can talk?" Her voice trembled with desperation. "I'm not sure. When will you be back?" "Well, there's a hitch. I don't have my passport or a plane ticket. My sister is sending me some money since all my credit cards were stolen. Oh, that reminds me. Please call those credit card companies and have them cancel my cards immediately." It's remarkable how she went from pleading for reconciliation to commanding the cancellation of her credit cards. Quite a transformation. "All right, I'll handle it right away. So, any idea when you'll be back home?" "I think in a few days. I spoke with the American consulate here, and they'll issue me a new passport. Let me know when you depart." "Sure, I'll do that." "Stu." "Yes?" "I love you. See you when you're back home." I ended the call. This means she won't return for a few more days. Perfect. I figured this would give me ample time to ensure my home renovations were completed and to take care of a few things to help kickstart a new life without her. The following day, Frank called to check in and invite me over for dinner. I accepted, as I hadn't had home-cooked food in over a week, surviving on pizza and Chinese takeout. After assuring Frank I wouldn't do anything impulsive, Shannon called. "Hey baby, I just got word that I'll be getting a new passport in a couple of days. All I need now is a plane ticket home. I could be with you in a few days, and if I catch an early flight, I'll be home later in the evening. Will you meet me at the airport? I really want us to talk as soon as possible." "This might not be the best idea, Shannon. It'd be better to ask your sister to pick you up and take you home. We can talk once you're back." I just placated her. By the time she arrives, I'll be at least 100 miles away. "Okay, baby. I love you, and I believe if you give me a chance, we can work through this, all right? Stu?" "Yes, we'll talk, and then we'll see." No guarantees. I deceived her, just as she once did to me. Now that I knew when she'd be back, I had ample time to tie up loose ends before leaving town. First, I sold my work truck and bought another one, used but in good shape, registered under a friend's name. Secondly, I had to inform my employees that I was shutting down the business due to my impending divorce. It was regrettable to leave so abruptly, but I owed them an explanation. Next, I contacted a college buddy now residing in Colorado. After graduation, he had suggested we go into business together. With seasonal housing needs, he promised steady work year-round. He was surprised by my situation with Shannon, recalling us as a perfect couple during our dating days. I inquired if he needed an assistant, and he gladly welcomed me, noting the surge in workload due to changing marijuana laws. I requested an informal arrangement to prevent Shannon from tracing my whereabouts, or accessing any funds from me. Everything was arranged, and all that remained was for me to depart. Shannon called multiple times daily, professing her love and pleading for forgiveness. She provided daily updates on her return, promising lifelong devotion upon her arrival. The day before her return, I loaded my new truck and emptied the house, leaving behind only Shannon's belongings or items of no value to me. Departing early in the morning, I aimed to slip out of the city unnoticed. I asked my neighbor to record Shannon's return as a favor, promising to alert him when she arrived, hinting at a surprise. Unaware of our marital strife, he cheerfully agreed, awaiting my call the following day. Everything was set as I departed the city, heading south toward my new life without Shannon. It would be a 2-day journey to my friend's house, and by then, Shannon would already be home. Along the way, I felt less angry and more serene than I had the previous week. Ever since I witnessed Shannon and Anthony together by the pool, it seemed like my life had gone down the drain. Now, however, I began to extricate myself from that pit of despair. Shannon called around noon and informed me she would be home the next day around 4 p.m. She inquired again if I could pick her up at the airport, but I explained I had errands to run and would return home after her arrival. She could just come in when she got there. Afterward, I phoned my neighbor, instructing him to be prepared with a video camera to capture the surprise I had planned for my wife. The following day, I was only an hour away from my friend's house in Colorado when Shannon called me. The house, it collapsed, just caved in on itself. It must be because of the snow. I barely put the key in the lock and turned it when suddenly there was this loud crash and the roof collapsed. "Oh God, our house is gone," she cried. Well, Shannon, don't fret. I'm sure your parents are still waiting for you in their room. As for me, I've taken other measures," I said cheerfully. "What do you mean? Our house is destroyed. How can you be so cheerful?" Now she was growing angry. Fine, my renovation unfolded exactly as planned. I rigged it so the house collapsed when she unlocked the door. I installed temporary bracing in the basement and used a chainsaw to cut the nails in the floor. The front door lock was connected to a switch that activated a winch I bought cheaply at a pawn shop. Using a pulley and ropes attached to temporary supports, as soon as she turned the key, the winch engaged and our house collapsed. You see, dear, our house didn't collapse on its own due to the snow. I had a hand in it, just as you did with our marriage. Best of luck finding a new home. At that moment, I reset it and called my neighbor. "Stu, you won't believe what happened. Your house just collapsed. Must have buckled under the snow, though there wasn't much of it. At least not enough to cause this much damage." He was thrilled. "I've got it all on tape, and luckily, your wife is okay. She was trying to open the door when it happened, and bam, the whole thing just fell in on itself." I asked him to email me the video when he could, as I wanted a copy of it. After the conversation, I powered off my phone and continued my journey towards a fresh start. It's been nearly 3 years since then, and I've managed to establish a comfortable life for myself here in Colorado. While I stay connected with a few friends back in Minnesota and stay informed about what's happening, I've avoided direct contact with family members because I was certain they'd disclose my whereabouts to Shannon. It appears Shannon achieved her desire and became pregnant with Anthony's child. Initially, she insisted the baby was mine, casting me as a neglectful father who fled. Sadly, even my own mother believed her narrative, eager for a grandchild. To resolve the matter, I reached out to a friend who then contacted my brother, urging him to request a DNA test for the baby, comparing it with my brother's DNA. If I were indeed the father, there would be a match. If not, there would be no resemblance. Astonishingly, she agreed. When the results arrived, my mother promptly expelled her from the house, vehemently denouncing her and her illegitimate child. Regarding Anthony, it seems he suffered severe injuries inflicted by those 2 men at the resort, spending over a week hospitalized before returning home. Upon his arrival, several other men, or rather ex-husbands, were waiting to confront him. He has since departed town for an undisclosed location, but rumors suggest he may be impotent. It seems his days of promiscuity are over.
Story 5.
Ethan Caldwell's fingers danced across the stems of a bouquet, his practiced hands weaving together a tapestry of colors and scents. The sweet aroma of lilies mingled with the earthy scent of fresh-cut greenery, filling the air of his small flower shop in downtown Whitefish, Montana. As he put the finishing touches on the arrangement, The bell above the door chimed. Ethan looked up, a smile spreading across his face as he saw Mrs. Henderson, one of his regulars. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson," he called out. "Your usual Friday bouquet?" The elderly woman nodded, her eyes twinkling. "You know me so well, Ethan. How's that lovely family of yours?" Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "They're wonderful. Thank you for asking. Lauren's gearing up for the new school year, and Mason's excited about starting kindergarten." As he wrapped Mrs. Henderson's bouquet, Ethan's mind wandered to his wife and son. At 35, he felt he had it all: a thriving business, a beautiful family, and a peaceful life in this picturesque mountain town. Later that evening, Ethan locked up the shop and headed home. The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. He pulled into the driveway of their modest two-story house, the sound of laughter drifting through an open window. Inside, he found Lauren and Mason in the kitchen, flour dusting their cheeks as they rolled out cookie dough. "Daddy!" Mason squealed, abandoning his task to run into Ethan's arms. Ethan scooped up his son, planting a kiss on his flour-covered forehead. "Hey, buddy, what are you two up to?" Lauren wiped her hands on her apron and came over to give Ethan a quick peck on the lips. "We're making cookies for the end-of-summer picnic at school tomorrow. Want to join us?" For a moment, Ethan just stood there, taking in the scene. His beautiful wife, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, smiled at him with those warm brown eyes. His son, a perfect mix of them both, giggling in his arms. This was happiness, he thought. This was everything he'd ever wanted. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, setting Mason down and rolling up his sleeves. They spent the evening baking, the kitchen filled with the sweet scent of vanilla and the sound of their laughter. As they worked, Lauren told him about her day at school, preparing her classroom for the incoming first graders. "I think this might be my best year yet," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I've got some new ideas for the reading corner, and I can't wait to meet my new students." Ethan loved seeing her so passionate about her work. It was one of the things that had first drawn him to her, that infectious enthusiasm for life and learning. After they put Mason to bed, Ethan and Lauren settled on the porch swing, a cool evening breeze rustling the leaves of the maple tree in their front yard. Lauren curled into his side, her head resting on his shoulder. "I was thinking," Ethan said, his arm around her waist, "maybe we could take a weekend trip soon. Just the three of us. Head up to Glacier National Park, do some hiking, show Mason the mountains up close." Lauren tilted her head up to look at him, a soft smile on her lips. "That sounds perfect. I love you, you know that?" Ethan leaned down to kiss her, savoring the sweetness of the moment. "I love you too," he murmured against her lips. As they sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, Ethan felt a sense of contentment wash over him. This was his life, filled with love, laughter, and simple joys. He couldn't imagine wanting anything more. A week later, Ethan was arranging a display of sunflowers in the shop window when the bell chimed. He turned to see Kyle Morrison, his oldest friend, walking in. Something about Kyle's expression made Ethan's smile falter. "Hey, Kyle," Ethan said, wiping his hands on his apron. "What brings you by?" Kyle ran a hand through his dark hair, his usually easygoing demeanor replaced by an uncharacteristic tension. "Got a minute to talk, man?" Ethan nodded, leading Kyle to the small office in the back of the shop. He pulled out 2 chairs, gesturing for Kyle to sit. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Kyle sank into the chair, his shoulders hunched. He wouldn't meet Ethan's eyes. I saw something today. That's something I think you need to know about." A knot formed in Ethan's stomach. He'd known Kyle since they were kids, and he'd never seen him this serious. "Okay," he said slowly. "What did you see?" Kyle took a deep breath, then finally looked up at Ethan. "I saw Lauren at the Stillwater coffee shop today." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Okay, and she wasn't alone, F. She was with a guy. Troy Bennett, I think his name is. He works at her school." The knot in Ethan's stomach tightened. "So? Lauren has male colleagues. What's the big deal?" Kyle's voice dropped low, as if he was afraid someone might overhear. "They weren't just having coffee, man. They were holding hands, like lovers." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He felt the air leave his lungs, his mind reeling. "What? No, that's impossible." You must have seen wrong." But even as he said it, Ethan knew it wasn't true. Kyle wouldn't make this up, wouldn't say something like this unless he was absolutely certain. "I wish I had," Kyle said, his voice heavy with regret. "But I saw what I saw. F." They were sitting in a corner booth, heads close together. And when they got up to leave, they were holding hands. It wasn't friendly, man. It was intimate. Ethan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He paced the small office, his mind racing. "No," he muttered. "No, Lauren wouldn't do that. We're happy. We have Mason. She loves me." Kyle stayed seated, watching his friend with concern. "I'm sorry, F. I really am. But I thought you needed to know." Ethan stopped pacing, bracing his hands on the desk. He felt like he might be sick. "How long were you watching them?" "About 20 minutes, Kyle said. "I was getting coffee to go, and I saw them when I walked in. I couldn't leave, F. I had to be sure before I told you." Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. His world was crumbling around him, and he didn't know how to stop it. "What are you going to do?" Kyle asked softly. Ethan straightened up, his jaw set. "I'm going to talk to Lauren. There has to be an explanation for this. There has to be." Kyle stood, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I'm here if you need me, man. Whatever happens." Ethan nodded, grateful for his friend's support even as his mind reeled from the information. As Kyle left, Ethan sank back into his chair, trying to make sense of what he'd just learned. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ethan went through the motions of running the shop, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept replaying Kyle's words in his head, trying to find some other explanation. But no matter how he looked at it, he couldn't shake the sickening feeling of betrayal. That evening, Ethan drove home in a daze. The familiar streets of Whitefish seemed alien now, as if the whole world had shifted on its axis. He pulled into the driveway, killing the engine but not getting out of the car right away. Through the living room window, he could see Lauren moving around, probably getting dinner ready. Everything looked so normal, so perfect. How could it all be a lie? Finally, he forced himself to go inside. The smell of lasagna, his favorite, filled the air, and he could hear Mason chattering away in the kitchen. For a moment, Ethan hesitated in the entryway, wondering if he should just pretend everything was fine. But the weight of Kyle's words pressed down on him, demanding answers. "Lauren," he called out, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Lauren appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile faltered when she saw his expression. "Sure, honey. What's wrong?" Ethan gestured to the living room. "In private, please." A flicker of something crossed Lauren's face, but it was gone so quickly. Ethan wasn't sure he'd seen it at all. She nodded, following him into the living room. "Mason, sweetie," she called over her shoulder. "Can you set the table for dinner? Mommy and Daddy need to talk for a minute." Once they were alone, Ethan turned to face his wife, the woman he'd loved for over a decade, the mother of his child. He searched her face, looking for any sign of guilt or deception, but all he saw was concern. "Ethan, you're scaring me," Lauren said, reaching out to touch his arm. "What's going on?" Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Kyle saw you today," he began, watching her reaction closely. "He saw you with Troy Bennett at the coffee shop, holding hands." Lauren's eyes widened, but then she let out a small laugh. "What? That's ridiculous. I was at school all day." "Don't lie to me, Lauren," Ethan said, his voice low and strained. "Kyle wouldn't make this up. He saw you." Lauren's expression hardened, her posture becoming defensive. "So, you're going to believe Kyle over your own wife? Is that it?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. "I don't want to believe it, Lauren. But Kyle's my oldest friend. He wouldn't tell me something like this unless he was absolutely sure." "Well, he's wrong," Lauren snapped. "I don't know what he thinks he saw, but it wasn't me. I was at school preparing for the new year. You can call and check if you don't believe me." Ethan studied her, wanting desperately to believe her. But something in her eyes, in the set of her jaw, made him hesitate. "Lauren, please. If something's going on, just tell me. We can work through it." Lauren's face softened, and she stepped closer to him. "Ethan, honey, nothing is going on. I love you. I love our family. Why would I risk that?" She reached up to cup his face, her touch familiar and comforting. For a moment, Ethan wanted to lean into it, to forget everything Kyle had told him. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and he couldn't shake it. "I want to believe you," he said softly. "I really do." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "Then believe me. Don't let Kyle's mistake ruin what we have." Ethan stepped back, breaking contact. "I need some time to think," he said. "I'm going for a walk." "Ethan, please," Lauren called after him, but he was already heading for the door. "Tell Mason I'll be back for dinner," he said over his shoulder, not looking back. As he walked through the quiet streets of their neighborhood, Ethan's mind was in turmoil. He wanted to believe Lauren, wanted to trust in the life they'd built together. But Kyle's words echoed in his head, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Over the next few weeks, tension grew in the Caldwell household. Lauren became distant, often staying late at school or going out with colleagues in the evenings. Ethan found himself watching her closely, looking for any sign that Kyle had been right. One night, as they lay in bed, Ethan turned to Lauren. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. Lauren was silent for a long moment. "Of course I'm happy," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Why wouldn't I be?" Ethan didn't respond, just turned away and pretended to sleep. But as he lay there in the dark, listening to Lauren's breathing, he couldn't shake the feeling that their perfect life was starting to unravel. Ethan stood in the flower shop, mechanically arranging a bouquet of red roses. His mind, however, was far from the task at hand. The past few weeks had been a blur of suspicion and growing unease. Lauren's late nights at school had become more frequent, and the warmth between them had all but disappeared. The bell above the door chimed, and Ethan looked up to see Kyle walk in. His friend's face was grim, matching Ethan's mood. "Hey, Kyle said, approaching the counter. "How are you holding up?" Ethan set down the roses, his shoulders slumping. "Not great, man. I can't shake this feeling that something's wrong. Lauren's been different, distant." Kyle leaned against the counter, his voice low. "Have you talked to her about it again?" "I've tried." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But every time I bring it up, she gets defensive, says I'm being paranoid, that I should trust her." "And do you?" Kyle asked, his eyes searching Ethan's face. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I want to," he finally said. "God, I want to, but you can't," Kyle finished for him. Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of guilt and anger wash over him. "I need to know for sure, Kyle. This uncertainty is killing me." Kyle straightened up, a determined look on his face. What if I keep an eye on her for you?" Ethan's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I could follow her, see where she goes, who she meets, get you the proof you need one way or the other." For a moment, Ethan hesitated. It felt wrong spying on his wife, but then he remembered the coldness in their bed, the secretive phone calls, the late nights. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do it." Over the next few days, Kyle kept Ethan updated on Lauren's movements. Each report felt like a knife twisting in Ethan's gut. She met Troy for coffee again. Kyle told him over the phone one evening. They sat close, talking for over an hour. Maybe it was just a work meeting, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Another day, another call. They had dinner together at that new Italian place, Kyle reported. Ethan. They were holding hands across the table. Ethan's free hand clenched into a fist. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, man. I'm sorry." The final straw came on a Friday afternoon. Ethan was closing up the shop when his phone rang. It was Kyle, and he sounded urgent. "Ethan, you need to come right now. Lauren and Troy just checked into the Whitefish Mountain Lodge together. I'm here at the hotel. You need to see this for yourself." Ethan felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. "I'll be right there," he managed to say before hanging up. As he drove to the hotel, a cold, angry knot formed in Ethan's chest. He'd been a fool, he realized. A blind, trusting fool. Well, no more. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful. Ethan pulled into the hotel parking lot, his hands shaking as he turned off the engine. Kyle was waiting for him near the entrance, his face a mask of concern. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Kyle asked as Ethan approached. Ethan's jaw clenched. "I have to know," he said, his voice hard. Which room? Room 315, Kyle replied. Ethan, maybe we should. But Ethan was already striding towards the hotel entrance, his whole body taut with anger and determination. He took the stairs two at a time, not willing to wait for the elevator. As he reached the third floor, he paused, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Room 315 loomed before him, innocuous yet threatening. Ethan raised his hand and knocked, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. For a moment, there was silence. Then, he heard movement inside the room. The door opened, and there stood Lauren, her face draining of color as she saw him. Ethan, she gasped. What are you doing here? Ethan's eyes bore into hers, searching for any trace of the woman he thought he knew. Where is he? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Lauren's eyes darted nervously. What are you talking about? There's no one here. Don't lie to me, Ethan shouted, pushing past her into the room. Troy, I know you're here, you coward. He stormed through the room, throwing open closet doors, checking under the bed. Lauren followed him, her voice high and panicked. Ethan, please. You're not thinking clearly. Let's just go home and talk about this. But Ethan wasn't listening. As he approached the bathroom door, he heard a faint sound from inside. His hand closed around the doorknob, but it was locked. Open the door, Troy, Ethan called out, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. Open it now, or I swear I'll break it down. Lauren grabbed his arm. Ethan, stop. This is crazy. He shook her off, his eyes never leaving the bathroom door. Last chance, Troy. Come out now, or I'm coming in. When there was no response, Ethan took a step back. With a roar of anger and pain, he kicked the door. It splintered under the force of his blow, swinging open to reveal Troy cowering in the bathtub. For a moment, the room was silent except for their heavy breathing. Then Troy spoke, his voice trembling. Ethan, I can explain. Explain? Ethan spat. Explain how you've been screwing my wife? How you've been destroying my family? He took a menacing step towards Troy, his fists clenched at his sides. Troy scrambled out of the tub, backing away until he hit the wall. Please, Troy whimpered. We never meant for this to happen. It just did. Ethan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. It just happened? Is that supposed to make it okay? He turned to Lauren, who was standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. How long? He demanded. How long has this been going on? Lauren couldn't meet his eyes. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. How long? Ethan repeated, each word like a hammer blow. Lauren's voice was barely above a whisper. 6 years. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. 6 years. Their entire marriage. Every moment, every memory is tainted by this betrayal. He turned back to Troy, his voice cold and furious. Run, he growled. Get out now, before I do something I might regret. Troy's eyes darted between Ethan and Lauren, panic evident on his face. Without warning, he bolted from the bathroom, pushing past Lauren. Ethan followed, his anger propelling him forward. You coward, Ethan shouted, advancing on Troy. You destroy my family, and now you run? Troy, eyes wild with fear, backed away towards the window. Stay back, he yelled, his voice shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Before either Ethan or Lauren could react, Troy turned and threw himself at the window. The glass shattered with a deafening crash, and Troy disappeared from view. No! Lauren screamed, rushing to the broken window. Ethan stood frozen, shock momentarily overriding his anger. He joined Lauren at the window, looking down to see Troy's crumpled form on top of a parked car 3 stories below. Oh God, Lauren sobbed, her hands covering her mouth. We need to call an ambulance. Ethan stepped back, his mind reeling. In the distance, he could hear sirens approaching. Someone must have already called 911. He turned to Lauren, his voice cold despite the chaos. This is on you. Both of you. Lauren reached for him, her face streaked with tears. Ethan, please, I never meant for any of this to happen. Ethan jerked away from her touch. Don't, he said, his voice like ice. Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. We're done. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving Lauren sobbing behind him. As he stepped into the hallway, he saw Kyle waiting anxiously. Kyle started, but Ethan held up a hand to stop him. Not now, he said. I need to be alone. Without another word, Ethan walked away, the sound of approaching sirens growing louder. Each step felt like it was taking him further from the life he thought he had, into an uncertain and painful future. The next few days passed in a blur for Ethan. He moved through his routines mechanically, opening and closing the flower shop, but his mind was elsewhere. The betrayal ate at him, coloring every memory, every moment of his married life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the police showed up at the shop. 2 officers, their faces grim, asked to speak with him privately. In the back office, the older of the 2 officers cleared his throat. Mr. Caldwell, we're here about an incident involving Troy Bennett. He's in the hospital, in critical condition. We understand you were there when he jumped from the window at the Whitefish Mountain Lodge last Friday. Ethan nodded slowly, his voice steady. Yes, I was there. I found my wife there with him. We had words, but I never touched him. He panicked and jumped after I told him to leave. The officers exchanged glances. We'll need a full statement from you, Mr. Caldwell, and I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to come down to the station. At the police station, Ethan recounted the events of that day, leaving nothing out. He described his confrontation with Troy and Lauren, the years of deception revealed, and Troy's desperate leap from the window. I was angry, he admitted, but I never threatened physical violence. I just told him to leave. The officers took his statement, asked a few more questions, and eventually let him go with a warning to stay in town. As Ethan left the station, he felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out now, for better or worse. When he got home, he found Lauren waiting for him. She stood as he entered, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Ethan, she began, her voice trembling. I heard about Troy. The police came by and saved it. Ethan cut her off, his voice cold. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Lauren flinched at his tone, but pressed on. Please, Ethan, we need to talk about this. About us. About Mason. At the mention of their son's name, Ethan felt a fresh wave of pain wash over him. Mason, he said softly. God, Lauren, how could you do this to him? To us? Lauren stepped closer, her hands outstretched pleadingly. I know I've hurt you, hurt our family, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this. Ethan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Fix this? Work through this? Lauren, you've been lying to me for our entire marriage. 6 years, you said. 6 years. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Every moment, every memory I thought we shared, it was all a lie. How am I supposed to trust anything you say now? Lauren's voice was small, broken. I do love you, Ethan. That wasn't a lie. Ethan stopped pacing, fixing her with a hard stare. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have betrayed me, betrayed our family. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to say next. I want a divorce, Lauren. I can't. I won't live like this. Wondering, doubting every word, every action. Lauren gasped, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Ethan, no. Please, we can work this out. Think about Mason. I am thinking about Mason, Ethan interrupted. I'm thinking about what kind of example we'd be setting if we stayed together after this. Living a lie, pretending everything's okay when it's not. He paused, a terrible thought occurring to him. Lauren, he said slowly, is Mason even my son? The color drained from Lauren's face. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, looking away. Ethan felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. Oh my God, he whispered. He's not, is he? Lauren's silence was all the confirmation he needed. Ethan stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter for support. Get out, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Get out of my house. Ethan, please, get out, he roared, his composure finally breaking. Lauren flinched, then slowly gathered her purse. At the door, she turned back. I'll be at my sister's, she said softly. When you're ready to talk, I won't be. Ethan cut her off. Ever. We're done, Lauren. For good. As the door closed behind her, Ethan sank to the floor, his back against the kitchen cabinets. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the loss of the son he thought was as caught down on him. For the first time since this nightmare began, he allowed himself to break down and cry. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Ethan's kitchen, but it brought no warmth to the man sitting at the table, staring blankly at his untouched coffee. A week had passed since Lauren's confession, but the pain and anger still burned as fresh as ever. The sound of the doorbell jolted Ethan from his thoughts. He opened the door to find a courier holding a small package. "Ethan Caldwell?" the courier asked. Ethan nodded, taking the package. "Thanks." Back in the kitchen, he tore open the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the results of the DNA test he'd ordered. Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the truth he already suspected. His eyes scanned the document, landing on the conclusion at the bottom. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. Despite expecting it, the confirmation hit Ethan like a physical blow. He slumped in his chair, the paper crumpling in his fist. Mason, the boy he'd loved and raised for 5 years, wasn't his son. Another lie, another betrayal. The ringing of his phone cut through the silence. Lauren's name flashed on the screen. Ethan hesitated, then answered. "What do you want, Lauren?" he asked, his voice cold. "Ethan, please." Lauren's voice was thick with tears. "We need to talk. About Mason, about us. There is no us anymore." Ethan cut her off. "And Mason? I just got the DNA results. He's not mine, is he?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Lauren," Ethan pressed, anger rising in his voice. "No," she finally whispered. "He's not." "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant save it." Ethan snapped. "I don't want to hear your apologizes or excuses. It's over, Lauren. All of it." "What about Mason?" Lauren asked, her voice small. "He loves you, Ethan. You're the only father he's ever known." Ethan closed his eyes, fighting back the wave of pain those words brought. "He's not my son, Lauren. You made sure of that. I can't be in his life anymore. It's better this way." "Ethan, no," Lauren cried. "You can't just abandon him. He's innocent in all this." "I'm not abandoning him," Ethan said, his voice hard. "I'm leaving him with his mother and his real father. Goodbye, Lauren." He hung up, cutting off Lauren's protests. For a long moment, Ethan sat there, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Then, with a determined set to his jaw, he stood up. It was time to end this chapter of his life for good. The next morning, Ethan found himself in the office of Jack Reynolds, the best divorce lawyer in Whitefish. The office was sleek and modern, a stark contrast to the turmoil in Ethan's mind. "So, Mr. Caldwell," Jack said, leaning back in his leather chair, "you want to file for divorce. On what grounds?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "How about adultery? My wife's been cheating on me for our entire marriage. 6 years of lies." Jack nodded, his expression sympathetic but professional. "I see. And I understand there's a child involved." "A child that isn't mine," Ethan said, sliding the DNA test results across the desk. "I want a clean break, Jack. I don't want anything to do with Lauren or Mason." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure about that, Mr. Caldwell? The court might still consider you the legal father, regardless of biology. You could potentially retain some custody rights." Ethan shook his head firmly. "No, I want Lauren to have full custody. I can't be a father to a child that isn't mine. That's a constant reminder of her betrayal." "All right," Jack said, making a note. "What about alimony? Given the circumstances, we might be able to argue against it." "Good," Ethan nodded. "I don't want to give her a dime more than I have to. In fact, I want to make sure she walks away with as little as possible. Can we do that?" Jack leaned forward, a glint in his eye. "Mr. Caldwell, with what you've told me, we can do a lot more than that. We can make sure she feels the consequences of her actions. Are you prepared to play hardball?" Ethan met the lawyer's gaze, his jaw set. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. She destroyed my life, Jack. I want her to understand exactly what that means." Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into the divorce proceedings with a single-minded focus. He cataloged every asset, every penny spent during their marriage. He gathered evidence of Lauren's affair, including statements from Kyle and hotel records. When Lauren tried to reach out to plead for a less aggressive approach, Ethan shut her down cold. "Ethan, please," she begged during one phone call. "This is destroying me. I can't afford to fight you like this." "You should have thought of that before you decided to cheat," Ethan replied, unmoved. "You made your choice, Lauren. Now you get to live with it." "What about Mason?" Lauren asked, her voice breaking. "He keeps asking for you. He doesn't understand why you won't see him." For a moment, Ethan's resolve wavered. The thought of Mason, confused and hurt, tore at his heart. But then he remembered the DNA test, the years of lies, and his heart hardened again. "Tell him whatever you want, Lauren, but I'm not going to pretend to be his father anymore. That's your burden to bear now." As he hung up, Ethan pushed down the guilt and pain, focusing instead on his plan. He would make sure Lauren understood the true cost of her betrayal. Months passed, and the divorce proceedings ground on. Ethan's flower shop continued to thrive, his work providing a much-needed distraction from the pain of his personal life. He threw himself into expanding the business, opening a second location in the neighboring town. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan sat in the courtroom, listening as the judge delivered the final divorce decree. Lauren sat on the other side of the room, looking pale and drawn. In the matter of Caldwell versus Caldwell, the judge began. "This court grants the divorce on the grounds of adultery. Mr. Caldwell's petition for Mrs. Caldwell to receive no alimony is granted. The marital assets will be divided as follows." Ethan listened with grim satisfaction as the judge outlined the settlement. Thanks to Jack's skillful maneuvering, Lauren was walking away with barely enough to cover her legal fees. The house would be sold, with Ethan receiving the majority of the proceeds. His business remained solely in his name. As the judge finished, Ethan stood buttoning his suit jacket. He allowed himself one glance at Lauren. She sat slumping in her chair, tears streaming down her face. For a brief moment, he felt a twinge of pity. Then he remembered the years of lies, the depth of her betrayal, and the feeling faded. Outside the courthouse, Lauren caught up to him. "Ethan, wait," she called out. He turned, his face impassive. "What is it, Lauren?" "I think the judge said everything that needs to be said." Lauren's eyes were red-rimmed, her voice pleading. "How am I supposed to support Mason on this? You've left me with nothing." "That's not my problem anymore," Ethan said coldly. "Maybe you should ask Troy for help." "Oh, wait. You can't, can you? Because he's in a coma." Lauren flunked at his words. "You don't mean that, Ethan. I know you. You're not this cruel." Ethan's laugh was harsh. "You don't know me at all, Lauren. The man you knew died the day I found out about your affair. This is who I am now, and you made me this way." He turned to leave, but Lauren's next words stopped him cold. "Troy died last night," she said quietly. "He never woke up from the coma." Ethan froze, a mix of emotions washing over him. Shock, a grim satisfaction, and an unexpected pang of guilt. He pushed the feelings down, turning back to Lauren with a hard expression. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, his tone making it clear he felt anything but sorry. "I hope it was worth it, Lauren. I hope the affair was worth destroying everything we had." With that, he walked away, leaving Lauren sobbing on the courthouse steps. As he drove home, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. He was free. In the following weeks, news of the divorce scandal spread through the small town of Whitefish. Ethan heard the whispers, saw the pitying looks, but he held his head high. He poured all his energy into his flower shop, expanding his business and building a new life for himself. Lauren, on the other hand, found her world crumbling around her. The story of her affair became public knowledge, and in a small town like Whitefish, secrets didn't stay secret for long. She lost her job at the elementary school, the parents unwilling to have their children taught by someone they saw as morally compromised. One day, as Ethan was closing up the shop, he saw Lauren across the street. She was walking quickly, her head down, ignoring the stares and whispers of passers-by. For a moment, their eyes met. Ethan saw the pain, the plea for forgiveness in her gaze. He turned away, locking the shop door with a decisive click. That night, as Ethan sat on his porch, nursing a glass of whiskey, he allowed himself to think about Mason for the first time in months. He wondered how the boy was doing if he still asked about Ethan. The pain of losing the child he'd thought was his son was still raw, but Ethan pushed it aside. He'd made his decision, and he would stick to it. As the years passed, Ethan's business continued to grow. He opened more shops in neighboring towns, building a small empire of flower shops across Montana. He dated casually, but never allowed himself to get too close to anyone. The scars of Lauren's betrayal ran deep, and Ethan was determined never to be that vulnerable again. Lauren's life, in contrast, continued its downward spiral. Unable to find work in Whitefish, she eventually moved away with Mason, leaving behind the town where everyone knew her shame. Ethan heard through the grapevine that she was struggling to make ends meet, working multiple jobs to support herself and her son. On a warm summer day, 5 years after the divorce, Ethan stood in his original shop, surveying the empire he'd built from his pain. The bell over the door chimed, and he turned to see a young boy enter, maybe 10 years old. With a jolt, Ethan recognized Mason. The boy had Lauren's eyes, but Ethan could see Troy in the set of his jaw, the shape of his face. For a moment, Ethan's heart clenched with a mix of love and pain. "Can I help you?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. Mason looked up at him, a mix of uncertainty and hope in his eyes. "Mr. Caldwell? I'm Mason. I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you, Mason." Ethan cut him off, his tone gentle but firm. "Does your mother know you're here?" Mason shook his head. "No, sir. I just wanted to see you, to ask why you left us." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He'd known this day might come, but he'd hoped to avoid it. "Mason, it's complicated. Adult things happen between your mother and me, things that can't be fixed. But you were my dad," Mason said, his voice small. "I miss you." For a moment, Ethan was tempted to pull the boy into a hug and tell him that everything would be okay. But he steeled himself against the impulse. That wasn't his role anymore. "I'm sorry, Mason," he said, his voice steady, "but I'm not your father. It's better this way, trust me. You should go home now." Mason's face fell, tears welling in his eyes. He nodded once, then turned and ran out of the shop. Ethan watched him go, ignoring the ache in his chest. As he turned back to his work, arranging a bouquet of roses, Ethan reflected on the path his life had taken. He'd lost the family he thought he had, but he'd gained something too. Independence, success, and the knowledge that he was strong enough to survive betrayal and come out stronger. The price of Lauren's deceit had been high, but Ethan had paid it in full. Now, as he stood amid the sweet scent of flowers, master of the life he'd built from the ashes of his marriage, Ethan knew he'd made the right choice. He was free, unburdened by the weight of lies and betrayal. And in that freedom, he'd found a kind of peace,